Excuse me, everybody. Just let you know, we're having a slight technical issues. I'm not going to gavel it in yet. Not on? We're almost ready to start. Am I on? Am I live here? I don't think so. Hello, everyone. Welcome.
Is your mic on?
I don't know. It seems to be on. A green light. Can you hear me out there? Am I on the mic? Now it's coming through on Susan's device. So I'm not actually going to open this meeting just yet. We need a little tech assistance here.
Seems to be coming through, just not very loud. I can hear a little bit.
Here. Yes, it is. Oh boy. All right, that's better. Welcome to the May 4th, 2023 regular meeting of the Encinitas Planning Commission. And I'm calling this meeting to order at 6:08 by the clock up there. Sorry we're a little bit late. We had a couple of technical issues to go through. Is it not working again? More volume. I'm not really in control of that. Someone in the control room testing 1, 2, 3.
So they're running around furiously. They're going to fix it, but we can proceed at this point.
I'm just going to take care of the intro stuff. We won't get to the meat. Oh, there I'm now. I'm loud. Dina, could we, or not Dina? I'm sorry. Stacy, right? Maria. Maria, thank you. And I'm sorry. I'm going to, instead of calling for a roll call, I'm going to note that we have 4 of our planning commissioners present, with Commissioner Ryan is absent this evening. And we like to begin each meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We start each meeting with oral communications where anyone wishing to speak on an item not on tonight's agenda gets the chance. I'll ask before I go into all the, Maria, do we have any oral communications this evening?
There are no oral communications.
All right. Well, I think most of us, a lot of us here know the drill, but we're going to move straight on. We have, next up is our changes to our agenda, and I'm going to move items 9, 10, and 11, items usually heard at the very end of our meeting, to directly after the consent calendar, because in item 8B, one of our commissioners will most likely have to recuse, and I'm not going to keep them here all night. The next up is the items on our consent calendar, and these items are considered non-controversial or routine in nature. All consent calendar items are typically voted on collectively in a single motion without any staff presentation, public comment, or deliberation. However, if a member of the public or one of the commissioners wishes to pull a consent item, we can do it and it will be heard immediately. There is only one item on our consent calendar this evening, and that is the Sereno edition, with case number multi 5500-2022. This is a public hearing to consider a design review permit and coastal development permit to allow the construction of a 651 square foot addition on the first and second floors of one unit within an existing 50% interest subdivision. Maria, has anyone requested to pull this item?
No requests.
No request? Anyone from the commission? I'd entertain a motion on the consent calendar.
Move to approve.
I second.
All right, and I think I've heard that we've had issues with our online voting, so we're going to do verbal voting, yea or nay. And so this item passes with 4 commissioners saying yes and 1 absent. And
That's correct. It's correct for me.
yes, so this was a unanimous with these sitting commissioners. Moving on from the consent calendar, I'm going to jump to the items usually heard at the end. Any future items added by the Planning Commission? Hearing none. Do we have any Planning Commission reports to share? Ditto none. Secretary reports. Anna, can,
There are none for secretary
well,
reports.
that was super easy. I will save the adjournment for later in the meeting here. We're moving straight into the regular agenda now. And on the regular agenda, we have only 2 items, and we're going to jump right into item 8A, which is the Beacons Beach Parking Lot Plan, case number 5456-2022. And this property is located at 948 Neptune Avenue. This is a public hearing to consider a major use permit and a coastal development permit to authorize the removal and replacement of the existing parking lot pavement to construct a new parking lot area beyond the existing failure plane of the bluff. And next up, do we have any disclosures from any of our commissioners? I mean, I'm there all the time, so that's my disclosure. I was there today, I got pictures, just to update. And I think it's time to pass this over to Todd Moreau, our Coastal Zone Program Administrator, for a staff presentation. Take it away, Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you indicated, this is a request for a major use permit and coastal development permit for the Beacons Beach parking lot removal and replacement. The subject site is located at 948 Neptune Avenue within the R11 zone and the Ecological Resource Open Space and Park Zone. The Coastal Bluff Overlay Zone, as well as the California Coastal Commission's appeal jurisdiction of the coastal zone. Scope of work of this project remains east of the mean high tide line, making the coastal development permit decision within the city's jurisdiction. According to section 30.09.100 of the zoning use matrix of the municipal code, basically the request to modify an existing parking lot within the parks and recreational area requires a use permit in the R11 and ERO SPK zones. There will be a temporary staging area as well. And basically, the Planning Commission is the authorized body to approve this permit within the Coastal Bluff Overlay Zone. I think most people are aware of where Beacons is, essentially off of Neptune, and then where Leucadia Boulevard basically dead ends, essentially is the area in question. The existing zoning out there, as indicated, is a split zone. So we have the R11, which is represented in the brown coloration, and then the open space zoning in the green. The existing lot itself actually expands well north of the physical park area. It does go off essentially the screen, but it's well north, and then it does go south beyond these properties here to the south. And this is Beacons itself from the view of the parking lot, looking down to portions of the beach. Same thing, looking from the parking lot, looking down towards the sand, and then this is from the sand looking back up the trail towards the parking lot. These are some photos of the more recent failure. Basically, it was last year of this month. This kind of shows the general area of where that occurred on the north end of the park site. And this is more on the south end of the park site, but same type of thing. This is the existing parking lot condition that we're talking about today. Basically, you can see Neptune Avenue on the left-hand side, kind of the entrance into the current parking lot, and then the angled parking that heads back in the southern direction. Various bike racks, the signage, same thing. Here's the parking lot from a different view. Same thing, the existing angled parking, and then kind of from both sides. Beacons Beach is located at Leucadia State Beach at the west end of Leucadia Boulevard with access off of Neptune Avenue. Existing beach access at Beacons Beach consists of a dirt trail beginning at a 26-stall public parking lot off of Neptune Avenue and leading down across the bluff face down to the sand. Beacons Beach and the access to the sand was historically created by a series of massive landslides between faults that run through Beacons Beach access path. In 1982 and 1983, previous stairway structures were damaged by additional landslide movement during winter storms. Since 1982 and 1983, the landslide areas have experienced additional instability, with the bluff sloughing occurring in April 2020, and the most recent bluff failure occurring this past year in May of 2022, essentially in this area here. So this, what we're looking at here is the existing condition of the parking lot that you saw in the photos, with the existing angle configuration and the access way off of Neptune, and then essentially the exit either down Leucadia Boulevard or returning northerly to the one-way drive on Neptune. AECom submitted a geotechnical report before and after the landslide for the current scope of the parking lot pavement, removal and replacement reconfiguration. Continued horizontal movements along the parking lot reflect ongoing erosion and soil creep, suggesting that the upper bluff slope within the active landslide area may eventually fail. The potential failure surface extends into the western portion of the existing parking lot. It's basically shown here in this dotted dash condition. It has been recommended that the parking lot move back approximately 7 feet to be past this failure plane. GeoPacifica, the city's geotechnical consultant, has reviewed both reports for this project and concurred with the findings and methodology. This just shows the side profiles of the geotechnical report, showing the landslide conditions, the borings, and then essentially where the parking lot itself, Neptune, and where it needs to be moved back. So the proposed project is requesting a major use permit and coastal permit to authorize the removal of the 26-stall parking lot to construct a 15-stall parking lot and pedestrian pathway behind the failure plane. The location is approximately 7 feet back from the current bluff edge. The parking lot stalls will be brought up to current code, meeting the current Encinitas parking design manual standards, including aisleway widths, double hairpin striping, and wheel stops, and meeting ADA standards. The project will meet the required 5-foot top of bluff edge setback of the existing bluff with the proposed walkway, parking lot, and safety fence reconfiguration. The current public access path will remain open during the removal and construction of the parking lot. The parking lot is anticipated to start construction after the summer season is over. The fencing, benches, and bike racks are considered minor accessory structures and are exempt from a building permit and the coastal permit process. But those will be replaced essentially in the same area that they are today. You can kind of see them in this general area, so it's not the exact reconfiguration, but we'll be putting back what's there as well as the benches you can see along the frontage here. In the plan, the reconfigured plan essentially shows Neptune Avenue narrowing ever so slightly on the through lane, and then the access is essentially more to the north, which kind of pulls you in this radius and has the different angles as far as we have a 13 and 14-foot lane, travel lane to get you through to the other side. So we essentially have 15 stalls here. The stalls on Neptune essentially will remain the same. I think we may have lost one there, but essentially it'd be parallel parking as it is today, as well as on the other side. AECom also submitted a hydrology and drainage report showing that the parking lot will drain in the same manner as it is today. There is a net reduction in impervious area from the existing condition. Additionally, the project is proposing a Green Street exemption for priority development projects permitted by the Best Management Practices Design Manual. And you can see here, this just shows the profile of the parking lot. The pathway actually gets wider than it is today. It's about 7 foot 10 inches. I think it's about 4 today. And then you can see the lane essentially is 16 feet wide within the parking on both sides of Neptune. And this slide basically is showing the temporary construction staging area that'll be present during the process. The goal is to have, as we indicated, access around it to get you down the trail to continue accessing the beach. And so with that, the proposed project is consistent with the general plan, local coastal program, and Encinitas municipal code. The project, as conditioned, would not have any significant effect on the environment. In addition, all required public improvements and utilities are available to serve the proposed development. So staff is recommending approval of case multi-005456-2022. And we are available here for questions.
Thank you, Todd. Do we have any questions from Planning Commission? Bob? We'll lead
Todd,
off
can
with
you pull back up the, one of the last slides that showed where the benches are located? So are those benches located where the parking lot used to be? And are they, clearly they need to be far enough back, but if you're moving the parking lot back, are the benches now far enough away from the slope?
Yeah, so the benches are modular. I mean, they're what, kind of like 6 feet long, but half concrete. Like, it's the standard kind of city bench that you see out there. So they're mobile enough to move. What's happening is the bluff edge is essentially in this area. This gets planted with the native vegetation, and it's moving back. So these benches will be placed so to meet ADA path of travel around them. So in theory, you could park in this handicap stall and navigate through the linear portions of the sidewalk and get around the benches with appropriate clearance.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have a question. I know right now there's, I think, 11 bike racks plus a B-cycle with 6 stalls. Are we gonna lose any of that, or is that still gonna fit in here? I know they're considered minor items, but I think if we're losing parking, e-bike spots are pretty critical.
Once we finalize the construction, we'll put the layout in and try to put everything as back as best as we can. But the space does shrink slightly in square footage, so.
So, I mean, at the outer edge of that little half roundabout, I mean, do bikes go up and over that? Is that a curb? What do you think, imagine is gonna happen there?
Yeah, that's a curb. 6-inch curb.
So,
Yeah.
how do bikes get in there?
Bikes can come in from the ramp on the ADA
Okay,
loading spot.
cool. That's it for now. Any other questions? I mean, I think we've all been aware of this project for a long time. I think I've been involved in every one of the Beacons Beach cases going back to, well, actually, we're still in questions now. What the hell am I doing talking? Excuse me. If there's no other questions for staff, I'm going to open public comment. And how many public speakers do we have tonight, Maria?
We have 6 for item 8A.
All right, well, let's get to it. Why don't you read out, we're going to get into a little practice here, because I think we're going to end up with a lot of speakers tonight, so we're going to pay to be efficient. So why don't you list off the first 3 and come right up front, hang out over here so you can get up quickly.
Okay, first is Darius Deeger, Roberta Slowikowska, sorry if that's wrong, and Matthew Gordon.
All right.
I'm Darius Dager, Lucadia. Oh, a little volume there. Greetings, esteemed commissioners. I bike or walk up Lucadia Boulevard to the Beacons parking lot most days, either to surf or walk the dog. I've been surfing at Beacons for nearly 50 years, so this is close to my heart, and I have some thoughts. Yes, it's great that we're redoing the parking lot for the security of the bluff. I support that wholeheartedly, and we shouldn't be concerned about a few lost parking spots. Locals should be biking and walking there anyway. Privileging parking is so last century. So that's all good. But the specifics of the design need further work, in my humble opinion. While we're making changes to the parking lot, let's give Lucadia's unofficial sunset viewing spiritual epicenter, the love it deserves. Here's how we might do that. You see, there's another problem connected to this issue. Walking and biking up and down the hill on Leucadia Boulevard is dangerous. There's just no room to walk or bike there. The street needs to be made one way, one lane, westbound sometime soon. That'll make space for a sidewalk and bike lane. So the parking bays in the parking lot should be angled the other way so that drivers cruise straight up into a spot. Then, ultimately, when Leucadia Boulevard is one way uphill, Jasper Street to the north could be made one way down the hill back to the highway. Then we'd have a logical loop from the highway into the parking lot and back to the highway. And without the bizarre old design of the circling back southward on a northbound one-way street, we'd gain the extra 8 or so feet currently wasted on that southbound parking lane. And that gained space could be used for an enhanced sunset viewing strip at the west side of the parking lot. Maybe something more than the few benches, or just a couple more benches, or wider space for the benches that you guys are talking about, and on a permeable surface. In other words, let's do something nice here, not just remake a strange, old, illogical design. Now, true, some of what I've mentioned here is not strictly about the parking lot issue that's on the agenda. So for now, just reverse the angle of the parking bays and plan a nicer viewing strip with the space we gain. Then whenever the one-way streets are accomplished, the parking lot will be ready. Please do not approve this plan without modifications. By the way, we were talking about all of this when I was on the Traffic Commission some 5 years ago, so it's really about time. Lastly, my parents built the house at 410 Neptune in the 70s on the bluff. And when we lived there, my mother used to say, sometimes with a slight hint of guilt, it seemed to me, this whole bluff-top strip should be a park for people to use. She was right. Of course, that's impossible, but we can at least achieve something nice on this one little stretch of the bluff. Thank you.
When you have a husband that thinks he's you sometimes. Listen, thank you so much for hearing us today. And the reason I'm speaking is because a lot of people don't know what's going on in Beacons. This was a nice presentation. It's the first time we saw it. We feel that there needs to be a real proper meeting, public meeting for all the people. Now, I know, Kevin, you've been in this for a long time. And so have we, for many, many years. We want the best for Beacons. What I'm afraid of is, number one, we've had the worst rainfall since 1950. All these studies that you've done are previous to this rainfall. Now, I don't know what's going to happen, but I can say one thing. When the earth is totally saturated with water, don't you think we better slow down before we start thinking everything is the same as it was even last year? So that frightens me, because we know that the bluff may be unstable, but we have to do something to the bottom. The top, we can fix. I'm totally and absolutely adamant that if you take the top off, and as you can see, they want to remove all that concrete, and then you want to just let that all slide down. Well, what if it all slides down? We don't know. And I don't care which way the parking goes, but the fact that we're losing parking, and I have parking, I'm right there, but I'm speaking for the people who couldn't come today, because they have to have parking. I know you say, oh, get an e-bike. Sure. A lot of people can't walk very well. A lot of people have to drive a car. The handicapped, the retirees. I heard that we had 25% more retirees in our area. So how are we gonna let them? I'm fine, but I have to speak for the other people as well, that they couldn't come here. It was too confusing. They didn't know what was going on. We were told that everyone got emails that this was changing. I went to see my neighbors, and they just said, no, we didn't get an email. Now, these people aren't going to tell me something that's not true. So I think we have to go back to the basics to create a real proper space I agree with a lot of what Dirk said. I really believe that we can make it more beautiful, but it was already passed. We came to the city, and they already passed the one-way system up from Lucadia. Why are we reinventing the wheel every time we come here? And I'm sure Kevin can say, we did that. We said, let's make it nice. We have a precious piece of land. We shouldn't be just thinking of little Band-Aids. We should be thinking of fix it properly. Fix it so it's safe. I just want to say, I don't agree that the safety, having it moving back, it's just going to rush down perhaps. I'm not a geologist. Thank you for your time.
Honorable Commissioners, Kevin Doyle, good to see you again. We've both been here for 20 years on this, and I agree with the last two speakers. We need a citizens' participation plan so people can get a chance to look at this and talk about it. It's spending $440,000 on something that possibly could be stabilized in place, or some of the suggestions we've had, which are so good, could be implemented. Obviously, this doesn't meet the requirement for the exemption for CEQA under the small parking lot that's been claimed. And by the supplemental citizen participation notice letter dated 6th of August, August 16th, by the city from Matt Wodelsky, acknowledged the substantial change to the original project in introduction of new project scope, project numbers, Exhibit 3. So you said, okay, we have a new project, and it's not the old project. The supplemental citizens participation notice on August 16th notices the old scope and new project scope. By the city's own admission, the new project numbers and new project scope or new plan required a new CCP. If you've got a new CCP, it's a new plan. You have a new citizens participation meeting, right? And the new CCP meeting is really demanded by us. We're demanding it because of substantial changes and deviations from the original CDP. And the meeting held in March on the 22nd of 2022. It's totally different. And these changes are the reduced number of parking spaces, safety regarding the traffic flow, and increase in pedestrian traffic on Lucadia West, which of course we pointed out has no sidewalks, and where the traffic is going to be increased because they can't park on Neptune, there's no room there, so they're going to be down on Lucadia Boulevard on the NCTD and walking up. And we have over 500,000 visitors a year that frequent this beach, as we know. And on some days, the traffic counts are up to 5,000 people. Well, could you imagine them walking up and down Neptune West? It looks a little scary to me. So we believe, based on these facts, the Planning Commission needs to postpone a decision until a CCP, a citizens participation, proper impact studies can be completed to provide us a study for the lost parking and possibly stabilizing the existing parking lot with standard means. And last, just we urge the Planning Commission to follow their own guidelines for zoning, municipal codes, the Coastal Commission, and the general plan, and not to approve the new Beacons parking plan for Lucadia Beach.
And
Thank you.
before you run off, I'm going to ask a question. You referenced a meeting and a
Yes.
document that seemed to indicate substantial changes to the plan. That's not part of my package, so I want to know what.
On March 22nd, 2022, there was a citizens participation meeting, Kevin, and
Okay,
that
I
was
was- it was
based
at
on
that.
CDP P5153-2022. And then we, of course, received new coastal development permit numbers and notice of a substantial change in the plan.
Okay. Thank you. That's what I need to know.
Thank you, Kevin.
Who's next?
Okay, the next three speakers are Sherry Clark, Jerry Rahill, and Michael Murphy.
Hi. Pull the mic down a little bit.
Yeah, there we go. My name's Sherry Clark, and I live on Vulcan, on North Vulcan, and access beacons via Leucadia Boulevard. And mine are just questions, actually. And the first one is how long the project's gonna take. It might have been in the report. And the second question is, I saw that on the report that we're gonna have beach access during all the construction. And my concern with that is because Stone Steps is closed. So those are my questions. So that's it.
Thanks.
My name's Jerry Rahill. I live very close to Beacons. I'm there 2 or 3 times every day. And I first wanted to add something to what Commissioner Doyle was saying about the bicycle parking. I have counted 100 bicycles there. That's not common, but it has happened, 4th of July. When the old bicycle racks were removed a year or so ago and replaced with the ones that are bolted into the ground, it was fine, except that they were too close together for the bikes with surf racks on them to fit. So you now, instead of having room for more bikes, we now had room for less. So then I talked to someone from the city and explained that, and they said, oh, well, were just following the manufacturer's guidelines. And I said, well, maybe you need to measure. Anyway, when they put in their second set of bike racks of the same type, they did put them farther apart. So that's part of what I wanted to say about the bike racks. The other thing is when I enlarged this picture out of all the multiple pages about this project that shows the number of bike racks, I count 25. So Commissioner Doyle also was asking about or mentioning about the e-bike, the rental bikes that are there. I think it's okay that they're there, except as long as they're not taking away from the number of spaces that the local people need to use for their own bikes. So I'm hoping, one thing, that there are enough bike racks for the people that live here to use rather than driving their cars, which they can't park there now anyway, and that they are far enough apart to allow for the bikes with surfboard racks, which I'm estimating on average is about half of the bikes that are up there. I also had a couple other things I was curious about, and maybe if you're curious about them as well, you can ask later, because I can't ask a question. It's my understanding. One is about the type of fence that will be there. Maybe it was in one of the plans and I missed it. The type of the fence that will be in front of the benches and the sidewalk. I'm guessing maybe it'll be a post and cable, but I don't know. And the other thing is, it stated that the parking lot is going to be removed and replaced. So I assume that means they're going to remove all the old asphalt and then put down new asphalt. And I didn't hear an explanation of why that's necessary or why they're going to do it that way. It seems like a lot of extra work and money and effort, but I'm not in that business, so I'm sure there's a good explanation. I'd like to hear what it is if someone can explain that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Michael Murphy, Leucadia. I'm for the project. I want it to go now. We keep wanting to kick the ball down the road over and over and over again. And as far as access on Leucadia Boulevard, there's other ways to do that as well. The people that are on Leucadia Boulevard have encroached. There is space for a path on both sides if we took back the land that is the city's. You can see telephone poles that are in people's yards, and they're spaced to the outside of it a good 5 feet. That if we took, and you know, the power companies do not put poles in people's yards. They put it on public space so they can access it whenever they want to. And as far as the parking spaces lost, I think with a little creativity up and down Neptune, there are spots that there are no parking signs that can be removed, or maybe angled parking. We can pick up a substantial amount of the parking. Also, with rail parking down on the rail, you do not have to go up Leucadia Boulevard. You could walk up some of the other streets so you're not with the traffic. With a little help from we could lower the speed limit on Leucadia Boulevard to 15 miles an hour, so it's like Lombard Street in San Francisco, and people are slowing down. Currently, it's 25, and it's only 20 on Neptune. So there are some other solutions if we just make some tweaks. Kicking it down and adding another 5 years to this process, I don't think is the way to go. The people are coming from all over. We're building and building and building. The parking spaces become negligible at that point because there's just so many people anyway. So I'm for the project. Please consider moving it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Do we have more speakers in this?
No more speakers for
No
this.
more speakers. All right. Well, I'm going to close public comment, and we're going to move on to commission deliberation. And I'm actually going to start off on this one. I usually don't. But this has been going on an awful long time. And I've been to several meetings and public meetings. I was at the CPP. Was it Evan? Somebody, it was one of our new planners. It was great. We were over in the poinsettia room. I've seen this plan. This was not new to me. This is not something that I just saw last week. This is something I saw a year and a half ago. I love beacons, and I want it to be here forever. And 11 parking spaces lost is going to be really, it's sad for Leucadia. Losing parking is really hard. I mean, we've gained some on the 101, but 11 spots. I feel this bluff, I want this staircase to last forever. I want this pathway down. In the past, I've felt perhaps council wasn't always on the same page, but here I feel we have got a strong council who wants the unique nature of this switchback trail going down the bluff. And, it's, I'd rather have the trail than 11 parking spots. And, God, it's going to fall again. And, every time we're going to have this conversation. So personally, I think it's time. It's got to happen. There are details. I hadn't even really thought about having things come in the other way. It seems to me, looking at the plans I've got in front of me, and that aside from the little bulb out, if we did reconfigure Leucadia Boulevard to be one way uphill, we could come and paint all that nice new asphalt and have them angle a different way. Might actually have to rejigger one corner, but it's just a little bit of pavement. But right now, it's cantilevered over the bluff. It's going down. Not right away, but, in my lifetime, and certainly in my kids' lifetime, we don't know exactly how it's going to go, but I feel it's sad. I usually park along the red curb with my little car. It's easier that way, but change is coming. I think the DG pathway, I do have questions about why we're redoing everything, but I've worked many years as a programmer, and I've learned if you have to replace 25% of anything, you may as well just scrape it clean and start over. It's cheaper and quicker. And that may be the case, and we'll ask questions there, but I don't really want to get into that just yet. So anyway, I think you know where I'm leaning on this. I'm going to pass it off to another planning commissioner if anyone wants to say anything on this.
I tend to lean your way as well, Kevin. The loss of 11 parking spaces doesn't bother me as much as the potential harm that would occur to someone that was there. So I'd rather prioritize people over the cars, and I think a lot of use at Beacons Beach is coming from local people that walk and ride their bike. And so the parking loss doesn't concern me. I think the configuration of the parking lot works very well. I was there this morning and was able to go one way on Neptune and enter the lot and then exit out on Leucadia Boulevard. So creating one-ways and all that just, I think, extends traffic further down Neptune and other residential streets.
Lets you loop around if you passed up a spot along the red curb and you wanted a spot inside.
Right.
And the other way, you're stuck. You got to go all the way back down to 101.
Right. I would say that there's very limited parking there currently. I mean, we're losing 11 spaces, but those 11 spaces aren't the difference between everybody being able to park there and not being able to park there. A good number of people can't park there anyway. And so I would support the project as it's shown to me today.
Susan?
Yeah, so I concur with Chair Doyle and also Commissioner Dalton. I favor safety, and although I feel for losing 11 spots, and I don't live real close, so I have to drive if I go there or ride my bike. And it's a beautiful spot, an iconic part of Encinitas, but I favor safety over parking. I also encourage adding the bike racks that can accommodate surf racks. I also think we should encourage the pedestrian access of that facility, and perhaps the city would like to put out an RFP for pedicab service or small shuttles. I think with all of the development we have mandated by the state, we are seeing more congestion perhaps, and more people that want to go down to the beach. And we need to think about that. As a city, I think we need to be smart about providing for people who want access in ways other than cars.
Thank you, Susan.
Are we allowed to ask staff some questions?
Oh, yeah, we totally.
I'd like to address Sherry's question. How long will this project take?
Right now, we anticipate 30 to 35 days for construction.
Oh.
And will beach access be available during construction?
We will try as much as possible to have beach access open, but it's possible there might be a couple of times where for a few hours it has to be closed when we are redoing concrete and/or asphalt right in the vicinity of the trail access. But the contractor will be instructed to keep the access open as much as possible.
And then Jerry had a couple questions that Commissioner Sherrod mentioned. The current bike racks that we have ordered for, will those accommodate his concerns about the surfboards?
We will check in and make sure that we get that noted on the plans.
And also Jerry's question for the type of fence that's going to be used.
We're going to be replacing the fence in kind. So like he mentioned, I think he said a post and cable fence.
Okay. And to Commissioner Doyle's point about, is there a chance to save money by doing a portion of the resurface rather than the entire resurface? Or is that just, to his point, 25%, you're pretty much over the top?
You are removing probably more than 25% right from the get-go in terms of how far we're moving the parking lot to the east. And then there's just the matter of wanting to be able to control the grades, being able to grade things to ADA standards, and also just to make it drain properly. That makes you want to basically start from scratch.
Because I'm not really concerned about the cost on that one. That's a minor cost compared to the overall cost of the project. But as Ms. Gordon mentioned, I mean, it's like the more work you're doing on top of that delicate bluff, scraping up all that blacktop maybe is not the best thing to do in terms of like causing potential more further landslides.
Well, again, when we said we wanted to make sure the drainage is adequate, so when you start over where the red curb is now, we need to do that in order to have the parking lot
drain properly to the outlets that we have. So that's why you have to go back, and some of the parking lot area, the asphalt is pretty withered, and there's certain potholes in various different places. So a good time, if we're going to do it, we should just fix it all and make it a proper parking lot and make the asphalt good.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Can you pull up the parking plan, the vertical that had the angles that, it was on a black and white? Yeah. All right, so the other gentleman had asked the question about changing the angles of the parking lot, but that would change the ingress and egress of the parking lot. This configuration, the way I understand it, allows someone who's a visitor to exit out Leucadia Boulevard, or exit out to Leucadia Boulevard, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So in simplistic terms, if we were to angle it the other way, one would have to then exit up Neptune to the north, and get to Jasper to get back out to, so that's taking cars into the neighborhood.
Correct, without any other future traffic modifications to the public streets. Correct. If we would just do that, that would be the case.
And I mean, the current egress is also potentially a left turn back onto Neptune to take another stab at parking.
Agreed. My concern was if you angled it the other way, you would
Yep.
lose one ingress and egress,
Yeah.
take people into the neighborhood. I just wanted to address his concern about the re-angling of it. It would force people to go into the neighborhood to exit out to the 101 versus being able to just go straight down Leucadia, to Leucadia. Okay. And the other-
No comments from
The other statement was you were narrowing Neptune just a little bit to be able to maintain the parking on both the east and west side of the street. Is that right?
Correct.
Just de minimisly, so it won't really be noticeable. A foot, 6 inches each side, whatever.
Correct, because we had to make sure we have the pedestrian path stays where it is, and to keep the angle parking on Neptune on the west side, a little bit of lane shrinkage had to happen.
In your staff report, you had pictures. Can you bring up the pictures of the street along Neptune? There, I believe there's a bike path there. The bike path won't be impacted? Yeah. So,
Correct, we will keep that pathway as well.
thank you.
It might shift slightly, but it will still be there.
It'll still be there? Yeah. And I agree with the both of you. This is time that gets done, and there's a safety factor here. And, you know, we let this keep going. Gosh knows what can happen in the future. This is an attempt to take water off, let the fix the draining. We're gonna lose some stalls, but at least we'll take care of some water flow that takes it off the bluff, maybe, and back down to the storm drains or back into the street. So,
I mean, Leucadia's had a rough few years. I mean, Beacons has had a rough few years, but it's been getting some love. I mean, since the first time I remember I think it's Miss Jessica Campbell, our assistant. She was head of Parks and Rec at the time. Jennifer Campbell. She was, and I remember it was the first Beacons meeting, and people were upset about all the trash. It wasn't maintained, and oh boy, I could just see her stewing while smiling. And a lot of work happened there, and we're getting, it's better, which is, I think, all we can hope. It's going to be here as long as I'm alive, I hope. And I don't know. Does anyone have anything more to say on this? I'd entertain a motion.
Well, I just wanted to add that it is something that's supported by California Coastal Commission. Surf Friday Foundation is the last email I got today, was that they had approved and recommended this as a solution. And they're all about surfing, and it's a surf beach. But still, they are going to stand behind it. And I also think that improving the ADA access is a really positive thing for that beach.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I don't know if it's truly ADA compatible, as you can get to the top of it, but I don't think you could get down that path in a wheelchair. I'm turning.
Well, I mean, the part, the
part up
7-foot
top,
wide
it's the best,
sidewalk.
it's one of the best sunset views.
I'd make a motion to approve the project per the staff reports, sorry, the staff resolution. And I'd like to maybe add a note that the bike rack should accommodate surf racks on 50% of the bikes.
It's a good add.
Okay.
Thank you, Steve. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Let's go with a verbal vote.
Aye.
And I'll say aye. That's a unanimous vote from our sitting commissioners with Commissioner Ryan absent. And how are we doing on time? Look at this, 7 o'clock. Is what it is, folks. And this case is closed. And give me a second to fold up some papers, and we'll move on to the main item on the agenda. Maria, how are we doing on speaker count for, or maybe I have to walk over there. My hearing is not so good. 17? All right. Well, that's not as bad as I thought. 7. Well, are people still here? All right. Nobody left the room, so I'm guessing you're all here for the Piraeus Point project. And this is item 8B, case number multi-5158-2022. The properties under discussion tonight are located at the northeast corner of Piraeus Street and Plato Place. This is a public hearing to consider no, that's not right. This is a public hearing to consider density bonus, tentative map, design review permit, coastal development permit, and a street vacation for the development of 149 residential townhomes consisting of 135 market rate and 15 at very low. Now, I'll note here that this is where I stumbled. Our agenda said that we were here to make a recommendation to City Council. That is incorrect. We are here to make a ruling on this. We're a quasi-judicial body, and this is, it may get appealed to council, but that is something for the future. Do we have any disclosures on this project?
Yes.
Commissioner Prendergast, take it away.
As many of you may know, I am a commercial real estate agent. I might become involved in business transactions involving Lennar Homes, the developer of the Piraeus property. The completion of that transaction may directly affect my personal finances and those of my employer, Jones Lang LaSalle. Because I believe in the integrity of the process, to avoid any appearance of impropriety, I've decided to recuse myself from consideration of this item. I will now leave the room and return for the next agenda item after the Commission's consideration of this item is complete.
And to be fair, I've moved the next agenda items. They're already complete.
Yes.
So you can watch us on TV at home.
I'm on my way.
All right. I'll give a few moments for him to clear the room. Take your time. Just give us a call if you've forgotten anything. We'll gather it up for you. All right, then. I'm going to pass this over to Nick. I'm going to try and say your last name. Koutafidis. How'd I do?
It's pretty
He's our
close.
senior planner, and he'll give us a staff presentation.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Nicholas Kodafides, and I will be presenting the Piraeus Point project. The department is before you today recommending approval of the project. The project site is located in the community of Leucadia on the corner of Piraeus Street and Plato Place. Plato Place is located along the southern boundary, and Piraeus and Interstate 5 are to the west. The project site is a housing element site allocated to address the regional housing needs assessment for the city of Encinitas. It was referred to as Site 2, the Cannon Properties. The site has been historically vacant and also utilized for agricultural use since prior to the city of Encinitas incorporation. The project proposes a residential development of 149 units consisting of 15 individual 3-story residential buildings on a 6.88 acre lot. The staff report stated 16 buildings, but there are 15. Proposed amenities include a pool, spa, pool house, and lounge seating. Additionally, the project includes a proposed 4.95 acre off-site preserve area north of the project site. The proposed applications include a design review permit, a density bonus condominium tentative map, a non-appealable coastal development permit, and a street vacation. An environmental impact report, or EIR, was prepared for the project. I will discuss the EIR later in my presentation. The project was reviewed under objective design guidelines and the Encinitas Municipal Code. The project was also reviewed against the State Density Bonus Law and Government Code Section 65913.4, which states that local jurisdictions' discretion on housing projects is limited to adopted objective standards. And just a clarification on the objective design standards. 1 second here. Oops. To clarify from the PC report and what I just said for the objective design standards, the project was deemed complete on February 15th, 2022, and the objective design standards were adopted on June 9th, 2022 by the California Coastal Commission. Therefore, the project is only subject to the previous design standards. The project is also within the Cultural Natural Resources Overlay, Special Study Overlay, Scenic Visual Corridor, and the Coastal Zone. Under the R30 overlay designation and zoning, the project site could be developed with up to 161 residential units without application of allowances under the state density bonus laws. With the application of density bonus, the project as proposed with 10% very low income units allows up to 272 homes. No changes to the existing land use or zoning are required or proposed to allow for project implementation. The applicant is requesting a density bonus. The project is proposing 149 units total, with 134 market rate units and 15 very low affordable units. The location of affordable units are dispersed throughout the project. Conditions of approval are in place to secure the units and ensure they are compliant with all affordable housing requirements outlined with state law and municipal code. In reference to the city's inclusionary ordinance, at the time the application was deemed submitted on February 15th, 2022, residential developments were required to provide 15% of the dwelling units for low-income households or provide 10% of the dwelling unit to very low-income households. On May 12, 2022, the updated inclusionary ordinance came into effect. The project is providing 10% of the proposed units for very low-income households in perpetuity. The density bonus permit is to allow for affordable housing and incentives and waivers allowed under state density bonus law. The project is requesting one incentive where two are allowed in order to construct the development at the density allowed under the law. The project proposes the elimination of the city's undergrounding utilities requirement for existing overhead utilities. As shown in orange, all of the existing SDG&E utility poles that currently surround the project site are 12 kilovolt and would typically be required to be undergrounded. However, The undergrounding of those utilities would involve substantial improvement costs, and the cost savings associated with this incentive request would enable the project to instead provide for deed-restricted affordable housing on site. While not required, the applicant has provided reasonable documentation to support the incentive request. The undergrounding of utilities is an element of the financial feasibility of the project and to provide very low-income affordable housing units. Under government code, the city may not apply any development standard that would have the effect of physically precluding the construction of the project at the densities allowed. Such waivers or reductions of development standards are unlimited in number and must be granted unless they would result in a specific adverse impact and for which there is no feasible method to mitigate or avoid the specific adverse impact. Pursuant to recent density bonus court cases, standards may be waived that physically preclude construction of a housing development meeting the requirements for a density bonus project. The project proposes an encroachment of approximately 40.3% within steep slopes. Approximately 33% of the project property is in slopes greater or equal to 25% grade. Pursuant to the municipal code, the applicant is entitled to a maximum encroachment of 20% into such steep slopes. The slopes outlined in green are manufactured, and the encroachment is within the northern portion of the site. The project proposes to waive the hillside inland bluff standards and proposes to encroach into steep slopes 40.3%. If required to strictly adhere to the municipal code's limitation of 20% encroachment, buildings 8 and 9 would be eliminated, as shown in red, resulting in the loss of 26 market rate units. The applicant has stated that the elimination of 26 market rate units would significantly hinder the ability to provide the proposed very low affordable units. The project site meets R30 development standards, including those listed here. Parking is provided pursuant to state density bonus law, and EV charging requirements are being met. 271 parking spaces are proposed. This slide shows the rendering of the townhomes, a view into the site from street perspective, and proposed amenities. The buildings provide varying building styles, heights, roof lines, and colors. As shown in the slide, the project will not exceed the 35-foot height limit. Any exceedance is allowable for mechanical equipment under the R30 designation. This includes the stairs that are exceeding the 35-foot height limit, because the interpretation is that the elevator shafts that is provided in the municipal code, this is a similar use to that. The project is providing 172 trees on site and is in compliance with all landscape standards. The total tree requirement is 30 trees per net acre, requiring 161. The proposed walls, cut and fill, and setbacks have been reviewed and found to be in compliance with R30 zone sites. The project requests were found to be in compliance with the Encinitas Municipal Code and General Plan. Therefore, the project was found to be in compliance with the local coastal program. The project is not within the Coastal Commission appeal jurisdiction. The project includes a street vacation along portions of Piraeus Street and Plato Place. The street vacation is requested in order to accommodate the project's entrance, retaining walls due to slope, and a biofiltration basin. With City Council approval, an approximately 0.25 acre area of Plato Place and 0.71 acres along Piraeus Street, adjacent to the project boundary, would be vacated. With approval of the vacation, approximately 0.96 acres would be added to the total gross acreage of the project site. It is important to note that the project is not including the proposed addition of 0.96 acres as part of their unit yield analysis. The proposed vacation has been reviewed by the city's traffic department and have determined that the remaining 60 feet on Piraeus Street will be adequate for future improvements based on the draft mobility element update. Additionally, the proposed vacation of Plato Place was analyzed and found that it will not interfere with any future improvements. A condition of approval is included as part of attachment PC1 to require City Council approval of the street vacation request. A citizen participation program was conducted on June 13th, 2022, with 80 members of the public, and some of the key issues raised are listed here. The applicant has also met several times with members of the community outside of the CPP process. During processing of the project, the city removed comments from stakeholders. These comments included concerns related to visual resources, biological resources, wildfire, transportation, and safe routes to schools. The community expressed concerns about the visual impacts of the project. While the scale, density, and height of the proposed structures, combined with the proposed manufactured slopes and retaining walls, would alter existing view sheds, the changed experience does not rise to a level of significance because views would not substantially differ from views of other existing land uses in the surrounding viewshed as one travels along Interstate 5. Furthermore, the project has been designed consistent with the scale, density, and height of future development as identified in the city's general plan and housing element, as well as applicable zoning regulations that are intended to protect designated scenic views. For these reasons, the project is not anticipated to result in a substantial adverse effect on scenic resources. The project proposes to mitigate for impacts to biological resources by establishing 5.51 acres of open space preserve that will be managed in perpetuity. Additionally, the project will provide 1.92 acres of off-site mitigation. The mitigation requirements will be to the satisfaction of the city and the wildlife agencies. The project site is located within a very high fire severity zone within the city of Encinitas. The project will provide defensible space by setting back all structures a minimum of 100 feet from native vegetation. Defensible space of 100 feet will be provided to the north of the project site. The project site will include modified fuel areas, a limited building zone easement over the fuel modification zone area, and an internal fire access roadway. A construction fire protection plan will be implemented during construction phase to reduce the risk of ignitions. The fire protection plan also includes measures to be implemented for fire-resistant building requirements. Prior to occupancy, a homeowners association shall be approved and in place to ensure ongoing fire safety and maintenance. Therefore, impacts will be less than significant. In the past, transportation impacts under CEQA were largely measured using level of service, which prioritizes traffic capacity and travel speed. In 2020, California changed this approach by shifting to vehicle miles traveled, or VMT, to focus on emission reductions and encourage land use decisions that don't induce more sprawl. Rather than assessing the capacity of roadways to accommodate traffic, a VMT-centered policy seeks to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and improve air quality. VMT measures the amount and distance a project might cause people to drive. CEQA requires a project to conduct a VMT analysis, and if they reach a certain level, provide mitigation as feasible by taking steps that can include improving access to transit and local amenities, incorporating affordable housing, or providing incentives to increase transit use. The project is anticipated to generate a VMT of 23.7 miles, which exceeds the significance threshold of 16.1 miles by 7.6 miles. The project would require a 32.1% or 7.6 mile reduction in VMT to be less than significant. The project is not anticipated to fall under the significance threshold as the project site is located in a suburban area that includes single-family homes with higher automobile ownership as compared to the region. While the project would implement an electric bike share program, provide for a variety of housing types, including very low-income affordable housing, and is consistent with the city's general plan, local coastal program, and the climate action plan, the project impacts related to VMT would be significant and unavoidable. A number of comments received pertain to the lack of existing sidewalks in the project area, and in particular, the lack of sidewalks extending from Plato Street to Cotter Street, and potential public safety issues for children walking to Capri Elementary School from the project site. A number of commenters also expressed concern that the city does not implement a Safe Routes to School program, with particular regard to child safety and safe access along bike and pedestrian routes to local schools. The Safe Routes to School program is a strategy that improves bicycle and pedestrian travel conditions around schools in order to increase opportunities for students and their families to use active modes of transportation to get to and from school. The project would construct approximately 1,100 linear feet of new sidewalk along the project frontage on Piraeus Street and Plato Place. Such sidewalks are intended to facilitate pedestrian movement and enhance pedestrian safety within the existing neighborhood and provide a potential future link to the larger pedestrian circulation system in surrounding neighborhoods. Under current conditions, few sidewalks are present, and therefore the opportunity to link to other pathways to enhance pedestrian safety and movement in the local neighborhood is limited. The construction of a sidewalk along Plato Place to Cotter Street was analyzed by the project applicant and determined to be infeasible. Under existing conditions, insufficient right-of-way width is not available to construct, I'll stay over here while we're on this, to construct a new sidewalk along the roadway due to various improvements in landscaping that have been installed over the years by private landowners and encroach into the right-of-way. Without disturbing or removing such improvements, construction of a sidewalk cannot feasibly be accommodated within the existing undeveloped right-of-way area that remains. Therefore, it was determined that provision of a sidewalk along Plato Place to Cotter Street to support local pedestrian movement, including assisting children in walking safely to and from Capri Elementary School, is currently considered to be infeasible. The project has been reviewed for compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act. An EIR was prepared and made available for a 60-day public review period from December 9th, 2022 to February 6th, 2023. A total of 51 comment letters were received during the public review period, with most of the comments being in opposition to the project. All environmental impacts would be mitigated to less than significant, except for transportation related to vehicle miles traveled. Impacts to transportation would remain significant and unavoidable. A decision-making agency may decide to adopt a statement of overriding considerations for a project because the agency views that the benefits resulting from the project outweigh its significant adverse environmental impacts. Staff finds that the project will have the following substantial overriding benefits: visual and functional compatibility, affordable housing for very low-income families, meeting state-mandated affordable housing requirements and further encouraging diversity within the community, and an open space preserve that's within the city of Encinitas. Therefore, staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt the resolution approving the planning applications, adopt the resolution certifying the EIR, adopt the CEQA findings of fact and the mitigation monitoring and reporting program, and adopt the statement of overriding considerations. This concludes staff's presentation, and we are available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Do we have any questions? I've got a few, but I don't need to start.
Yes, thank you for that. I'm interested in the height of the retaining walls, on the site retaining walls. There are some pretty tall ones. Could you identify in the site plan where those are and what the highest or tallest wall is?
So, 1 second here. Just give me a moment to find it. The tallest wall is located at the easternmost portion of the site at 29.7 feet tall.
Is that a single wall or is it a series of walls?
It is a single wall.
Okay. Is that within the setback of the rear? And is that considered the rear yard?
That's outside of the setback.
And you said 30 feet?
29.7 feet.
Okay. Okay, so that's it in pink, and then the property line is another 15 feet or something back from that?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. I'm curious, I thought that R30 overlay sites were categorically exempt from CEQA, and so there was an EIR done. Was that a voluntary thing that the developer did?
So the housing element sites are exempt from CEQA when they're providing 20% affordable, but also the bigger part of it is that they're only doing rentals. If you decide to do a condominium map like this project, then you are subject to CEQA.
Okay. And did this project meet the minimum threshold units? I don't know what the term is in the city, but when it was identified as an R30 site, right, there was a certain minimum number of units that would have to be put on this site. Is it meeting that?
It is meeting the 25 dwelling unit minimum. I can get the exact number for you if you'd like.
Okay. And if you could look at the project page in the plans A2, AD1, it's a diagram of the exterior elevations that illustrates the height limit and the projections that exceed the height limit.
Sorry, what was it?
Well, almost any of these will do, but I understand that you're exempting the stair towers as kind of an interpretation of them as similar to an elevator shaft. But there are other areas here, say the guardrails, that exceed the height. Is there a reason that the guardrails are allowed to exceed the height? And I referred to A2, AD1 as a specific example where it looks like the guardrails extend over that height. That's one of these.
D. You said.
Stop right. Almost any of these show it. Go one more to the elevation of this for me there. In the lower right corner, right where keynote 3 is above, isn't that a guardrail that extends above the height limit? Or on the left elevation, in that middle kind of brown gray section of building, it looks like a glass guardrail and there's an arrowhead that says allowable roof projection, and it's pointing to the stair presumably behind that guardrail. But the guardrail itself, is it exempt?
The guardrail itself, so I know these are kind of hard because of the slope. That's why we also have the other exhibits showing the blue, if it's actually going to exceed it. And they will be required at condition of approval to give a height certification by a surveyor to verify that. The allowable, I guess, if it was to go over that, then
Okay,
then
I
they
understand
would.
where you are. Okay, those are my questions. Thank you for answering those.
Problem.
Hey, let me stop you before you go too far, because you're right where I want to be. I want to see the height, the 3D height version, but I want to see Building E if I could.
Sorry, which building?
Building E, I think it's 2 more down. You're looking at D, there we go. Building E is the most representative. I think it's repeated 9 times in the project. And what I'm looking at here is I'm looking at the roof decks. And on this one here, because it's a little tricky trying to figure out, on the plans, obviously, 2 of them have the roof decks. You can see here on the right, they're extending out almost to the edge of the building, and on the other side, they're set back. And I'm trying to figure out what orientation this building has. And the reason I'm curious is I want to know if those decks on the right side of this picture are Are they to the east or are they to the west? See what I'm after? So if this was spun around, if this to the right is to those residential properties to the east, then the decks are closer to those buildings. And if it's spun the other way around, what do I see? I'm looking right down, geez, I wish I had my laser pointer here.
I see what you're saying about where
Just to the
those-
right, is that the rest of the complex or is that the slope? What is that deck looking out for? You look straight out away from the building. Are you looking towards the sunset or away from it?
I'd have to check it from the actual, depending on the building, I guess, unless the applicant would
One of
want to
the
answer that
plans
one.
is- But maybe there's a different way. This is a good one. I love these drawings because this was the best 3D rep. But maybe look just above it. We've got, you can zoom in on the overhead plan there. So those black outlines are rooftop decks. And the ones on the right go to the edge of the building. The ones on the left are set back a certain number of feet.
I see what you're saying.
And all of a sudden, it starts to become important, which, on this diagram, what's west and what's east?
Oh, I see. So, that makes sense. So it appears that they're projecting west.
So the decks to the right look out to the west?
It depends, I guess, where,
Because it's kind of important
Which-
because we have rooftop decks and I want them as far away from the residential property as possible. And here's a structure where the decks are offset one side as opposed to the other.
I might suggest you look at the landscape plan that used the roof decks as part of the building footprint.
see.
And I'm trying to find you the number, but
Oh, yeah, actually, I think I have that, L11.
L11, and it looks to me like those decks are away from the east property line, if that was your question.
Are they?
Right here?
I mean, are these the decks here?
No, I think those are roofs and these are decks.
Oh, okay, because this looks like. the
So if
flat
I were
piece
to-
and
We
that-
put furniture on the deck, so that's all the.
Okay. So I'm looking at
Yeah.
this one, trying to tie these two together. And it would be nice if the decks faced away. Because there's also solar in those other sections.
Just trying to find the right exhibit here.
Welcome to our hell, trying to navigate through this really hellishly big PDF. Usually crash Acrobat about 3 times every time I do this.
I'm just trying to zoom in enough so you can see it. Man, it just went away. Okay.
All right, well, Steve, you were right. I see that little furniture now, and it is facing into the internal courtyard and away from the neighboring properties. Is everyone else reading that the way I am? So the rooftop deck is actually offset, geez, how far would that be? 15, 16 feet back?
About that, I would say.
Oh, yeah, here I see up in the top, on the overhead view, see, we've got 10 feet from the edge of the building, brings us up almost to the deck, so it's probably like 12. So it's pushed back another 12 feet, which would put it, gotta be, I'm assuming 30 feet from the property line. Yep. Yeah, it's, you've, really done your homework on this one. wish I could say I loved another big housing project. As big housing projects go, this is well enough designed. I like the, I don't know, are we in questions? We're not even there yet. Shh, stop that. No questions. I'm done. Thank you very much. We will dig into the weeds a little bit later.
I do have a follow-up question as well, and
Go
it might
for it.
involve Anna. I've got the Encinitas standard, design standards and guidelines amended January 2022. And I guess as I understand from you, Nick, because the Coastal Commission didn't act on it until June of '22, that they didn't take effect in June? Or did they become effective in January?
They became effective in June as a result. Similar to the inclusionary housing, it was only effective the next day after Coastal Commission approval.
Okay, thanks.
Susan, do you have any questions of staff? And bear in mind, I drifted into commentary, but it's okay.
I had a lot of notes, and I'm not sure if I had questions for staff or just my own comments.
Yeah, and we can ask questions afterwards, just if there's things that are unclear now, it's best to get them out before, or for public comment, because they may want to know some of those answers beforehand.
My main question would be regarding liability. If, for example, we have a seismic event and there would be damage or collapse of any part of the structure or site, would the city be indemnified? Would the responsibility, liability be on the developer or the city?
So as with all private property, this is privately owned property, so if it subsides, they have a duty to, if your property subsides onto somebody else's property, that is their responsibility, and they would have to pay the city.
No, that was it. That was my main question.
Okay, I've got one more, and this is a traffic-related question, referring to the traffic report by intersecting metrics. And the 23.7 VMT per capita, it's a new one for us. I mean, it used to be, we were all about ADT, and we still use ADT for some thresholds, but VMT is the bomb now, and now VMT per capita. Now, the VMT per capita for this site is listed at 23.7 in the traffic study, but that's on page 10. And on page 11, we see a chart of what the VMT per capita is throughout our region, and it's 23.7, 21.8, 22.2. All of these numbers are from 2016. So this region where this project is, in 2016, had a 23.7 VMT per capita. Yet the traffic study says that because of this project, that'll bring it to 23.7. It's certainly, so if it's always been 23.7 and the project is going to make it worse, so the VMT per capita must be some number higher than that. It's almost like they just pulled the number from 2016 but didn't really do any calculations. So I don't know, who wants to field that one?
Hi, this is Bob Stark from Michael Baker International. We were authored the EIR. The VMT is a bit of a funky nut, if you will. So there's a heat map that Sandag has prepared. So these are all regional prescribed VMT numbers per capita. So really, any project that would fit in this part of the map or one of the other parts locally on the map, you just simply connect the dots from what Sandag is showing because they're looking at this region-wide, which is what VMT is all about. There's the bigger picture here. It's all related to climate change and emissions reductions and getting people out of their cars and whatnot. So it is literally as simple as that. You look on the map and it says, in this part of town in Encinitas, this is how far people are driving every day. Based on certain assumptions, conditions, modeling, like, affluence and car ownership and some of the other things that Mr. Kudfides already mentioned. So you're stuck with that number, regardless of what the project is, mind you. Frankly, this could be a development that is restricted to Olympic cyclists, and it would still be 23 miles that they're presumed to be driving every day.
But I want to know how much this project is impacting the rest of the immediate area, and this report doesn't tell me that, like, at all.
Sure, if you're looking
I saw
at
897 on the ADTs, but ADTs are something we don't do anymore. I know that's
Correct.
just under the 1,000-unit threshold, but again, that's 5 years ago. We don't do that anymore.
Well, and you can still do that, and I believe those numbers do exist, and I would defer to the city's traffic engineer to expand on that. But all we're saying is it's not subject to CEQA anymore. That doesn't mean that the city cannot study the older, classic metrics of delay, which was what the level of service and the graded A through F metrics. Intersection capacity, volume ratios, things of that nature may still be very important for consideration. It just is explicitly by law outside of CEQA now.
Okay, well, we will probably touch on this issue when we get to deliberations. My question's answered. No other questions? I'm thinking of going to.
I have a few.
Oh, okay.
I could ask them now, or I could ask them later.
Yeah, if they fall under deliberations, let's wait. I want to try and hear from the public. I mean, if you have specific questions about things in the report. So Maria, now you've been doing some calculations. I know you said we had 17 speakers, and I know several of them I think have time donations. Is that correct?
Correct.
What do you think we've got in terms of minutes of talking?
I have not calculated.
Well, tell me how many speakers. Well, no, but if people have time donations, it's going to be higher.
Yes, so there's, I believe, 17 speakers.
You know what? I'm going to say, let's take a 5-minute recess. Can we do that? Because I'm going to consult with her, and we're going to go over. I just want to make sure that we can get through our public comments properly. So 5 minutes, folks. It might be 6. Come on, folks, let's get it going. Let's see, where did it? People, if we can all sit down, and a little quiet, welcome back. I lost track of when I called this break, so we're back. And we are actually going to start with an applicant presentation. I think Brian Grover is here representing the applicant. No? I'm sorry about that. I saw Brian there. Give him 10 minutes on the clock.
We're waiting for a, we've got a presentation,
Yeah,
Commissioner?
we'll wait.
So as soon as
Don't
that
start
comes
the
up,
clock
and
until
then
he's ready.
Bear with me. While that's coming up, I'll take the time and introduce myself. My name is David Shepard, Commissioner, Chairman, and Commissioners. My name is David Shepard with Lennar Homes. On a personal note, I'm really excited to be here. I am a third-generation native Californian, lived in both Southern California and Northern California for many years. About almost 30 years ago, ended up moving into Leucadia. And at that time, I decided all the other places I've lived in California, coastal North County is the place for me. And I've been here ever since. Fortunately, I'm not a resident any longer in Encinitas, but excited to be here with this. Again, very personal for me. So moving forward, we are partnered with Brian Grover and Nolan Communities, and I'll speak a little bit about that going forward. There we go. So as I mentioned, when Brian approached Lennar Homes about partnering on this opportunity, we got really excited because Nolan Communities has a good local touch with the city of Encinitas, has had a good track record there. And also we both share the approach of working with communities, trying to do what's right for the community and ensure that the new community that we build within the larger community that we are in really fits and is right for the community, and that we listen to the neighbors and work with them to try and make it compatible for all. Do I need to, there we go. So as was mentioned earlier, there was a CPP meeting. In addition to that, we had 17 other individual meetings with various members of the community starting almost a year ago to the day. And we heard many comments. We heard about density, preservation of open space, community compatibility, traffic, parking, circulation, and height view concerns the community had. When we began working on the site, we really tasked ourselves with three key things. We wanted to make sure we were attending to the city's goals with the housing element. Things moving a little slow. Preservation of open space and community context. So in response to that, one of the things we did is, as Nick mentioned, there's a max density on the site if we're using density bonus law. And we recognized that we could build up to 272 homes staying at our very low 10% affordable allocation that we have right now, or even go up as high as 311 homes. Doing that, we felt was just not the right thing for the community. We felt it was going to be shoving too much in, having too much of an impact on the open space, the views, the heights, all of that with the community, and just didn't feel it was right. And that's why you see us right now at 149 homes before you. We also think we're very excited that a family with an annual income of $65,000 will be able to buy 15 of these homes and live in them in perpetuity. And again, we've preserved 48% of the total open site as permanent open space that will be funded with an endowment by Lennar. There it goes. So thinking about community compatibility, we recognize that this is a new housing type, but the time is now for this type. It's a modern coastal architecture. We put a lot of thought into designing it. And we also explored opportunities for lower site elevations, recognizing that doing that was just going to put us in a situation where those walls would become even larger and we'd end up with a fortress around the site. Didn't really want to do that. Again, I spoke to the affordable housing, deed-restricted homes for very low incomes. Also, this is a for sale opportunity, not a for rent opportunity. We think that's good. It's a long-term thing for the community. To home ownership is a wonderful thing. And then we've increased guest parking. Nick spoke about the total amount of 271 parking spaces. we added 16 additional parking spaces. That was in direct response to the neighbors in the community about they felt there needed to be more guest parking there. We got as far as we could with adding those additional 16 spaces. So here's a map as if you were going, walking up from Plato Place along the main spine road, looking at the architecture. Again, wanted to point out our sensitivity to heights and views. And again, we did look at trying to lower the site, just couldn't make it work and keeping at the density that we wanted to keep and need to keep to make the project work for us. You can see some of the neat things about the architecture there. We've got some private balconies and then the rooftop decks as well. There we go. This is another view as if you were walking south towards Plato Place, and you can see the neighborhood recreation area there. And again, looking at the landscape and the product, we feel this really makes for a nice feel for the area. Just wanted to give you a sense of the orientation and also to point out the rooftop decks. Speaking of that, Commissioner Doyle, you hit the nail on the head. We very consciously made sure that those setbacks on the east side were set away from the property, the existing property in those homes. We did that very intentionally to give that space and give that separation so we weren't encroaching again too much on the existing neighbors that are there. Does not want to move for me. There we go. So circulation traffic was a big issue. We are constructing a new sidewalk along Piraeus and Plato, coming up on the frontage of the project. Additionally, vehicle access is limited to only off Piraeus. You saw that in Nick's presentation. That was a big response into community feedback to limit that access onto Plato and restrict it to just emergency vehicle access only. Showing you again this view, and I just wanted to point out the area there, that Plato access, that'll be restricted with a gate, and we'll come up with that in final design, working with the fire department and coming up with whatever they require there. Wanted just to see it and see the sidewalk. There was mention earlier about the sidewalk coming up Plato up to Cotter. And you can see there, we did look at it. Nick spoke very well to it. I don't want to repeat too much, but we did look at it very sincerely, and we're interested in seeing what we could do, and it's just untenable for the project to take on something of that magnitude with all the private encroachments into the public right-of-way. So in summary, we really feel that the application before you balances housing accountability with the surrounding community. We're excited about being able to provide new market rate homes of a product type that is not much like this in Encinitas right now. We're happy to be preserving 48% of the open space, and we tried to be as responsive as we could to community feedback. I want to go back to our partnership with Nolan Communities and ask Brian to come up here and speak a little bit about how we've worked together and going forward. I also want to let you know that all members, we have specifically our engineers here, our wall designer is here, and our architect, as well as our traffic engineer and our other technical design team to answer any questions that you have. So with that, I want to thank you for your time, request your vote in support of the project, and let Brian close it out.
Cool. Thank you, Dave. Hello, Planning Commissioners, Chair. Brian Grover, Nolan Communities. I just wanted to give a really brief, I've got a couple minutes here, really brief context on where we started with this project, where I started with this project, how Lennar got involved. I'd been working with prior developers on this site several years ago, and we were looking at doing an apartment project, all rental, somewhere between 230 and 250 units. And those projects weren't really going so well. They were all in diligence. They hadn't got into escrow or anything on the property. And I saw an opportunity to bring in a for sale group, Lennar, and do substantially fewer units and do a more context-sensitive design. I completely understand where the neighbors are coming from. It's a housing element site, right? It's high density. It's not going to be exactly like the neighborhood that it's next to because it's higher density than what's there. But for an R30 site, I truly believe that we've done a really good job making this site work at as low a density as possible, not as high a density as possible. This is very similar to what we did at Fox Point Farms, which was a very well-received project that's under construction right now. And so I just wanted to get up and say that. In addition, I feel very strongly about not misusing state density bonus law. We're using it, but I truly don't feel like we are overusing it. We have one waiver request and one incentive request. We're not asking for additional height. We're not doing anything that I would consider to be egregious. And we actually looked into avoiding that waiver and that incentive, and that's included in the density bonus report. So I understand that some people don't like the project. It's change. A lot of people don't like change. But I think we've done something really sensitive here with frankly, a difficult site to work with. It works pretty well with this project. So thank you.
Thank you. So we are going to dive into public comment on this one. Now, I've got a list from the ECC, which is the Encinitas. Honestly, I can't remember what the two C's are in this one. And I believe we've figured there's about an hour on that one. And in addition to that, we have perhaps another 6 or 8. I see it looks like more than that from here. Anyway, if we're lucky, we can get through this in an hour and a half. I'm going to make a plea to everyone, because we had a discussion here. I could have chosen to, with the amount of speakers we had, I could have chosen to knock the time limit down to 2 minutes. I don't want to do that. I'd prefer it to be at 3 minutes, and I'm going to ask you all to be courteous and kind. And if somebody's up here and has just said what you said, or you're just saying it again and you realize that, just kind of say what he said. He really nailed it. And let's try and keep this moving smoothly. We good with that? And we'll start off with Maria. Line them up. Give us at least 3 people.
Okay, I'd like to note that there are 8 people who filled out the slip and do not wish to speak in opposition to the recommended action. As the first speakers will be Scott Campbell with a time donation from Tim G. Are you present?
Where's Tim?
He left.
Oh, man.
Time donation, please. All right, thank you, Cindy. Is that acceptable, Commissioner?
That's acceptable. Well, she's not going to speak twice, is she? No. You're not going to speak twice, right? Yeah, but you've already turned in a slip for potential time donation. We're good.
Okay, well, my name is Scott Campbell, and I live in District 1. Good evening, commissioners and staff. I really appreciate the staff's honesty and candor in the analysis. There was some interesting stuff that was not typical. I had a presentation, but we can fake this. Kieran? Okay. So the first item, oh, there we go. So let's talk about the RHNA, the arena. The estimates of what we wanted to do projected was 208 units at very low income, and we're actually going to put in 15. That's a deficit of 193. I'm sure the no net loss guys are not going to be happy to hear that. But what really, the bigger point is, are we dumb or are we just naive to have these overly rosy numbers? They talk about the 48% of open space. Let's not forget that a huge amount of that is actually unbuildable, extreme slopes. So it's really, we shouldn't ignore that as a consideration. Incentive and waivers. Yes, they are only asking for one waiver. The 40% encroachment, which is a pretty huge waiver. The amount of sand is equivalent to one of the dumpings at Cardiff almost 10 years ago, over 10 years ago. It's a lot of dirt. I'd say that the incentive to not underground, that's also a waiver too. That's a city standard. We need to do that. I want that in front of my house. I would pay money to have undergrounding. The developers are asking the city to give them land. So they can put the bioremediation basin. That really should be, utilities and public utilities should be part of the property and not as part of the public property that is everybody's enjoyment. Once again, only 10% of these units are affordable. Some of these other places are putting in 20. Sound and lighting. I came before this commission 2 weeks ago and mentioned lighting. and it kind of went nowhere. I brought this up at the Environmental Commission. It went really nowhere with that. In fact, actually this week, one of the arts commissioners brought up lighting, and their commission deferred it back to the Environmental Commission. So here we are, full circle. Nobody wants to take responsibility for lighting. We have all sorts of stuff about sound, construction, debris. I'm sure some of these people in the audience here will know that there's one house in that neighborhood that burns wood in their chimney, and in the mornings when it's calm, that smoke's going nowhere. I would assume that same weather or wind patterns would work with the trucks and diesel and all that stuff. But my main concern here is these basically fourth-story rooftop patios. This is a new thing for Encinitas. It's not a rooftop patio, but the whole development has them. This is new. There's no mention in any of these documents, the 1,000 pages basically, of what can be put up there. They talk about the lighting and downflow lighting, but that's for the development. As an owner, what's going to stop me from putting up two 84-inch TVs, a couple disco lights, and some sound systems, and rocking out the neighborhood? And now, in fact, you know what? In my unit, I'm going to get the other people to do it too. It's going to be a party place. How can we prevent this from happening? It's going to lights pollution. This is a dark skies neighborhood. There's zero light in this neighborhood right now, zero. And this is a huge thing. These are beacons. They're going to be lighthouses. There's going to be 138. The front lightage. Do we really need a 5x14 lighted sign? That's really huge. And all night long, every night. And back to the patios, nothing stops these people from turning off the lights at night or makes them turn them off. More sound. This is a key thing. They anticipate that the deck tops won't be occupied. There's nothing about what percentage of confidence they have or what the confidence interval. What's the majority mean? These are so undefined as to be less than useful. Private and common space. This is actually a design standard, 200 feet per unit. It's kind of fishy what common amenity space really means. If you look at what they're talking about the pool area, it's much less, 6,245 compared to almost 30,000 square feet. I think they're talking about landscaping on steep slopes and basically inaccessible areas. That's bogus. These rooftop lounges, the 3-bedroom ones are 372 square feet, some of them. That's 47% the size of a 1-bedroom unit. That's huge. These are huge decks. I talked about what can go on up there. Look at what's going on there. These, with the tables and chairs, this is bigger than the dining rooms in these units. Who's not going to use those? This is a really interesting, on the mobility aspect. They talk about travel time to get to Jimbo's. Not Smart and Final, not any of the other nice places, but Jimbo's. This chart shows people driving 55 miles an hour on Piraeus. That's not realistic at all. That means all the other numbers are skeptical, super skeptical. They're talking about the 1,110 feet of linear sidewalk. Most of that's internal. The sidewalk's in nowhere. This development's in the middle of nowhere. There's no resources or anything near it. They talk about the bicycle sharing. They don't talk about how many units are going to be there. I ask the commission to stay this and not approve this tonight. Thank you.
Okay, the next speakers will be Cheryl Garcia, followed by Dolores Welty and Donna Westbrook.
Hello, my name's Cheryl Garcia, and I live on Urania. And I have a concern about the excavation and the amount of dirt also, but there's others that are more suited to talk about that. But since I've lived on Urania, there have been 3 large projects built. The Fiore project, 28 homes, 2 affordable. Fritz's project, 23 homes, 3 affordable. Maravu, 47 homes. I don't know if there's any affordable. and then a project of 5 homes. And nothing has been done to help mitigate the traffic through our 2-lane roads. They're small country roads, and they're still the same, except for some speed bumps have been put in. And I just worry about the term being unavoidable continuing to be used to where it's soon going to become unlivable, because trying to get out of our home during pickup and drop-off at Capri is virtually impossible. And we were promised, due to a petition signed by many neighbors, that the south end of Piraeus would be reopened when I-5 was expanded. Well, that didn't happen. And so all of that traffic is still coming through our neighborhood. I'm wondering when it will be reopened. There was a concern about changing the angle of the parking spaces on Beacon because it would force the traffic to go through the neighborhood. Well, what do you think happened when they closed Piraeus? All that traffic's coming through our neighborhood. And I also share Commissioner Sherrod's concern about the liability. I think we all can remember the La Costa project that collapsed and the couple of condominiums were lost. And also there's been discussion about building a school on Quail Garden. If that happened, that would alleviate some of the traffic. So I realize that the city has to comply with the state's mandates, but I would appreciate it if you would protect the people that already live here in complying with the state's mandate. And I was wondering, is there an HOA that's going to be there to maintain this huge project? And how much do those cost? Anyhow, thank you.
Hi, Dolores Welty, Leucadia on Sheridan Road. Nice to thank you for this opportunity to comment.
Can I clarify just 1 second? I'm so sorry. So we're going a little out of order of the names that Maria had called out.
Oh.
So we're gonna, no, it's okay. We'll go ahead and start with you. She just didn't call out the name, so. Oh, okay. Sorry, there was a request to go first from the ECC, is that correct?
In someone's place.
It's okay?
I think we're going
Okay.
through the loose ones, and then we're going to do the ECC.
Want to make sure everyone's okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Dolores. Sorry for that.
Yeah, I heard my name called, and so I came forward. And
Yes,
now
well,
I
you
only
should've.
have 2.56 minutes. So I don't have a lot to say, and I have to say the development looks beautiful in paintings. They always do. The pictures are always really nice, and people look so happy. But I ask you to deny the waiver of encroachment into the bluff. I know you said it was only 29 plus a little bit high, the wall, the retaining wall, but you forget it goes down another 10 feet. So my estimate of a 40-foot high, 40-foot retaining wall is correct. And I wrote you about that. And the concern I have, if in these wet years, whether it will hold or not, it would be a good idea to require a bond. I don't know who's supposed to pay for it. If the neighbor's land falls into the development, is the neighbor supposed to pay for it? He didn't put that retaining wall. Or is the developer, the homeowners association, supposed to fix his lawn? I see there's some extra development space in case the wall should collapse, but it could. It could. We tried to build a house on Fire Mountain during one of those rainy years. Ye gods, we never did make it. Then let's see. There's no playground. I've written that ever since we started here. If you have kids in there, you really should have a ground floor place for them to play. I don't know what it's going to be like upstairs on those rooftops with a 2-year-old or a 4-year-old, and the screaming that they do at Flower Hill is, with that little bit of playground, is really uncontrollable. Let's see. The EIR provides only 4 electrical plug-ins for electric cars. That's not enough. The city of Encinitas is going to require us to go all electric, and then he only has to give us 4 plug-ins. That's not enough. If you deny the encroachment into the bluff, the developer said he can't build the low, but he can still build low. And he can still build. He'd have to eliminate buildings 8 and 9, those 2 eastern buildings. But he is cutting, that bluff encroaches into 1/3 of his property. That's a huge encroachment for him to remove and try to hold back. I think you should take a real good look at that. You haven't had a hydrological person look at the groundwater either. And thank you.
Next. She's coming up. She's getting a presentation set. Who's after Donna?
It will be the ECC, starting with Dennis Caden, and then there is a video, and I need a speaker for that. Is Richard Horowitz here? Okay.
That's all right. We'll get to that. Let's hear from Dolores.
Donna Westbrook,
Or
Encinitas.
Donna, I'm sorry.
I just found this, apparently, they had some rewrites on several, or actually 3, at least 3 of the categories. And this was on the transportation. And it says that it's cumulative on the VMT impacts, and it is considerable. So I don't see how you could even look at this without saying we've got a problem here. What bothers me when I think about this is that I can see it talks about it's only 2.5 miles to get down to the Forum and whatever, but it's downhill. It'll be a nice ride down, but it's going to be a terrible one coming up, if you've seen what it looks like. And to take little kids, if this is what it's supposed to be, because for low income or low income, there's going to be little kids. Can you imagine the mother pushing the stroller and holding another one on the back, or maybe 3 of them, and all of a sudden they're going to run down to Jimbo's and get their food, or if they're lucky, they can go over to Stater Brothers and then march back up. What is it? 5 hours maybe by the time you get there? Is that what you want to put on families in this so-called wonderful place? What also bothers me is I thought this is also going to be marketed to seniors. Well, I've heard that if you've got 2 stories, you do not need an elevator for seniors. But once you get over the 2, you got 3 stories, you need elevators. Well, maybe that's only because they're all seniors, I don't know. But you need to check into this because there are a lot of seniors that need that elevator, their visitors need that elevator, and even the children need the elevators. Now, you want to mark off 1 story for each one of those buildings, maybe look at it and you don't need the elevators. But it's a horrible thing not to put in some way to get to whatever your 3rd-story apartment is. Now, if this is all going to be townhouses so that you end up climbing 1 steps to the next floor and then to the next floor, that's a lot of climbing in steps. I don't care who it is, whether you're 20, 21, or 10 years old. So think about this design. It's not designed for people who are not in great shape. Also, I really can't see how you could approve something and allow them to put this in without any means, and we're talking sidewalks, to get to wherever they want to go. It's not going to work. And if you get down to Leucadia, fine. But unless you've got, and I'm sure they're going to offer you a shuttle, please do not fall for that. Deny this project tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Dennis Caden with 2 time donations. Is Peter Soland here? The video. So it'll be Richard Horowitz presenting the video with 2 time donations from Jerome Stockham. Are you here? And Susan Soland. Are you here?
Technology.
Take it away.
Thank you, commissioners, for the opportunity to respond to this Piraeus Point project. We are very much opposed to this 4-level, 149-unit project and request denial of all the waivers and incentives, or even better. Well, no, I'm not. The video is after me. Sorry, the video is after I speak. So, okay. Okay, we would ask you to deny all the waivers and incentives, or even better, the parcel be completely removed from the R30 overlay due to the numerous number of constraints undisclosed to the city prior to its selection. There's unnecessary grading. The slope greater than 40% should not be cut into. The site's in the scenic visual corridor and needs to be preserved. The wall that's proposed seems to be a bit gargantuan and preposterous. Don't allow the applicant to excavate the greater than 40% slope, as according to our general plan, and remove over 60,000 cubic yards of soil for the project site. No waiver, please, for cutting into the slope. Don't give this away. If you do, ask for 50 more parking spaces. Oh, wait, you can't do that. It's not possible. But you can deny waivers and incentives. Require an independent hydrogeology study on the soils behind where that 30-foot high wall, or now we know it's 40-foot high wall, is going to go. The city will be liable for any unanticipated geological movements that cause sinkholes or other soil movements over time. Please request and review the hydrogeology soil study on this retaining wall before you arrive at your decision. Denying the building of the 30-foot high, 40-foot high retaining wall and cutting into the slopes. The liability will be with the city. Undergrounding the utilities, if you do allow the incentive, make it worth it. Demand 40 or 50 additional more parking spaces. Oh, wait, you can't do that. But you can deny the waivers and incentives. Why have a requirement for the new development to underground utilities when it's in our general plan, policy 4.12, which is regarding undergrounding of utilities? The liability is with the city. You can deny waivers and incentives. Circulation element 2.4. This is so important for every community. When considering circulation patterns and standards, primary consideration will be given to the preservation of character and safety of existing residential neighborhoods. Where conflicts arise between the motorist and neighborhood safety, community character preservation, the latter will have first priority. Seems like we're the butt end of, all the communities are getting to be the butt end of the R30 overlays. Traffic in our neighborhood continues to be ever frustrating, especially after experiencing we have multiple roads that have been barricaded and our major access is now closed to Leucadia Boulevard. Piraeus no longer gets you to Leucadia Boulevard. Traffic, as you heard, is forced to go through unimproved, narrow neighborhood streets full of driveways. Nothing can be done to fix our dilemma now, but you can deny the requested waivers and incentives to lessen the impact of this project on us. Please enforce policy 2.4 for our sake. Pretty please. Can you assure the city widens Piraeus at La Costa Avenue? The Piraeus widening so left-hand turning vehicles onto La Costa don't block the right-hand people trying to turn. It's already a bottleneck, worse than we ever imagined, and the project isn't even there yet. and the applicant complains 80% of their residents' traffic is going to go to La Costa, that will be a bloody nightmare. Don't allow for the vacation of the Plato and Piraeus right-of-ways and use that for a what do we call them? A southbound offset lane and northbound offset lane so they can get into their project without having people behind them slam on the brakes. Sorry. Yeah, the city should not give away this right-of-way. It's almost an acre of land. You're going to give it to them. Parking is severely lacking. We'll have some good laughs about parking from our other speakers. Require the CC&Rs to state that Piraeus Point residents must park their vehicles in their garage and not fill the garage with storage stuff. CC&R should mandate educational awareness of no parking on Piraeus, Plato, and Carter Street. Piraeus Homeowners Association should be required to pay the tow. You cannot fix our neighborhood traffic difficulties. You cannot reopen Piraeus at Leucadia, and according to state inclusionary housing laws, there's so little you can do. But you can deny the waivers and incentive to reduce this project's impact on us, especially our safety. Safe walk to school. Enforce the public safety element 1.2, restricting development on hillside inland bluffs over 25% slope. That will reduce the amount of people living there. Pedestrians and vehicle safety issues abound, especially for Capri Elementary. No improvements have been made or planned to carry Piraeus Point's traffic, Clark, nor Fox Point. That's all going to come into our neighborhood to get to Capri School. We're killed now. People can't even get into their own homes because they're waiting behind traffic, waiting for people to pick up their kids. Policy 2.1.3 states, ensure infrastructure and public benefits, such as schools, parks, roads, sewers, and blah, 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 are adequately planned and funded prior to approving any increasing zoning. We were so disappointed to hear, or maybe encouraged, that the sidewalk of Plato is infeasible, yet it states infrastructure and public benefits, and when they say roads, I assume that means sidewalks too, must be adequately planned and funded. What a liability that will be for the city. Air quality. Here we go. Somebody else will be talking about, that's a health and safety issue. The quality of life in Encinitas on that location is probably going to be of the worst in town. The Piraeus Point Townhomes, according to the EIR, is located in a non-attainment ambient air quality area. In other words, you can't fix the air there. Based on calculations, including in the HRA, cancer risks from the project residents resulting from exposure to suspended diesel particulates would exceed the established SDA-PCD excess cancer risk significant threshold. So the mitigation is, and the mitigating measure AQ1 requires the installation of a MERV 16 air filter. So don't open your windows, don't go outside on those patio decks, because the air quality is not good. More importantly, for our own good as the residents, please require an air quality study for the evacuation and construction period to protect our dear neighbors just a few feet east of the point. There's going to be 6,000 diesel dump trucks that'll have negative air quality impacts, spewing toxic suspended diesel particulates into the neighboring homes. They're just going to be feet away. These are our neighbors and us. Remember, the coastal breezes here blow to the east, and the source of these diesel fumes will be concentrated. Coming from that one parcel, it's like inhaling from the top of a polluting smokestack. And what are the diesel trucks sequencing in line, waiting to get loaded up? The liability will be on the city. Additional CC&Rs should include enforced limited lighting, party noise. We've been there. I'll stop to save you time. Commissioners, we feel many general plan policy violations with Piraeus Point, or anything that went there that's high density. Your hands are tied to certain decisions and enforcement. You are not tied to deny the requests and waivers and incentives. We trust you to faithfully enforce our general plan policies for our safety. Please favor the preservation of character and deny the waivers and incentives. Thank you. Okay, now we have a video to to make it all clear.
For the record, Jerome Stockham's and Susan Solin's time donation went towards Dennis. How many time donations do you need for the video? One, okay. So Richard Horowitz, and is Peter Soland here for the time donation? Okay.
Yeah, I'm just gonna check if it works first before I.
Thank you for that. Who's up next, Maria?
Next is David Hill with 2 time donations. Teresa Hill, are you present? And Greg Spires. Okay.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm David Hill, resident here in Leucadia. I'm an engineer and also environmental engineer. And I've been in this business something like about 55 years. And worked on 3 continents, Middle East, Europe, Canada and here in the US. So I had a little bit of experience in construction issues. I did write a letter on behalf of ECC, which I hope you've read it and you have understand, obviously, what we're talking about here on the issues as per the video. Primarily, I understand that this property, everybody should know, was never built upon. It was part of the internal bluff for not only the bluff and south of Bataquitas Lagoon. Reason why it wasn't built upon is because an internal bluff or inland bluff, what we have, is also subject to all the drainage of the 220-odd acres, which is crest acres. And it all flows through north of the property, through a natural ravine, and through the Cannon property. And that all flows also to the southwest and goes underneath Parias, parallel to the freeway, underneath the freeway, and over to Bataquitas Lagoon. And I know Bataquitas Lagoon because I'm a board member of Bataquitas Lagoon and in charge, and I'm the chair of the water quality monitoring program for Bataquitas Lagoon. So I know about the MS4 and the watershed and where the water comes from, not only from the streetscape project, which we indulge in, as well as other issues. And this one is where I live in that area, Crest Acres, and that's most important. One thing also needs to remind everybody is that the hydromodification units that they want to put in on this project is reliant upon the magnanimity of and the kindness of the city of Encinitas by giving them this 1 acre land to put the hydromodification on there. That should not be the case. They should put it on their own property and reduce the whole ensemble of the construction. We should not, as citizens, give the land away to a developer so they can use it in order to make a profit. This is wrong, absolutely wrong. One most important thing here is the retaining wall that they want to build in, which is a kind of a single cover type retaining wall, and it does go down beyond 40 feet, maybe down to 48, because there needs to be a tow passive at below grade level of about 8 to 10 feet. That's not called out for. There are no project drawings. There's no structural engineer being involved in any of this. There's no structural drawings. And certainly no hydrogeologist is being incorporated into this project to review the geology as well as the hydrology of the site, which is most important. And come back to the fact that this property hasn't been built upon because of the constraints and how you're going to get it resolved. And you can't. It was R1, which means you could probably only put 6 homes on 1 acre. Here we put in 149 townhomes, and I have to beg and ask the difference between a condominium map and a townhome map because the AIA indicates there's a definite difference between a condominium and a townhome. And I did ask staff a year and a half ago when we were involved in this, and I never got an answer because they didn't know the difference between a condominium and a townhome. And I beg the question that needs to be answered before you can approve this project. What the heck is the difference between a townhome and a condominium? And that needs to be resolved. And also the plans need to reflect that also. But come back to the, when you slice and dice this property, now you want to retain all those hydrostatic forces coming down from Crest Acres. There's an awful lot of volume of water underground, down at the 50-foot level and the 29-foot level, and no flow based on the transmissivity, the porosity of the soil has been given. Sure, they've got flows in the various nodes when they did the hydro study, but there is no actual flow diagrams that one can take a look at and say, this is the flow, this is the area of concern. But no hydrogeologists have been involved in this, and it's most important that they be. And an independent one also, not part of the Michael Baker International and not part of the civil engineers, but an independent one to give an unbiased opinion of what they have here. But one thing as per the video, and that was the fact that you build this wall to retain the flow of the aquifer draining. But the thing is, you want to put in this cheap methodology of putting in soil nails. And the thing is, the soil nails, they're injected 15, maybe 20 feet into the soil. But the thing is, you've got these, you got the electric eye overhead 12 kV lines, pole supported, in the soil nail zone that is subject to potential corrosion from the aquifer and from the water flowing through. Now you say, oh, and in the letter I talk about the aggressivity of the water, and because you use pesticides, acid rain is coming down, so you're going to be below 7 pH, and once you stop below that, that's going to be aggressive, and that's going to attack anything that you put into that soil. And shotcrete is not enough to cover this retaining wall. It just doesn't have the strength. And then the retaining wall has the welded wire mesh, and that's all going to rust away at some point in time. And then you're going to get efflorescence coming through, and you're going to get seepage, and you're going to get settlement, and then you're going to have a disaster. And because if they do the dewatering of the aquifer, which is what they show on the drawings, behind the retaining wall, you're going to create depressions because now you're taking away that water. And who's going to monitor this? Sure, they got an orifice plate somewhere in one of the hydromodification or in one of the basins, but that's not enough. You can see the potential here. So once you start dewatering and it's going to silt up, or the water table is going to flow. It's not going to flow. It's going to increase and decrease in regards to the weather. Obviously, we had an awful lot of rain. We had 3 or 4 times as much as normal this year. It's going to impact this project, and if you get seepage and efflorescence in that back wall, it's going to create issues. Not only the disaster that's waiting to happen. So there's alternative methods of retaining walls. This is the cheapest way to go since it was developed by the highway transportation people back in the 70s without these issues of hydrostatic forces. So they're trying to apply this thing, this methodology, but it doesn't work. Sorry about that, but that's the way it is. But I hope you take these into consideration in your review tonight. Thank you.
Next, we have Luke Schaefer with a time donation from Todd Goldstein. Todd, are you present? Okay.
Good evening, council members, staff. My name's Luke Schaefer. Born and raised in this community, and I live in the residence directly east of the buildings that you were questioning about there at the beginning of this conversation. I think yourself, Commissioner Doyle, Dalton, you were questioning the height of the homes, and you were questioning the height of the rooftop patios and whatnot. With my family living right there directly east on that northeast side, not only is that impeding our view and our ability to enjoy the home that we've purchased there, but the view of the people up there looking back into our home, right? That our house was designed to look at the ocean, to enjoy that view completely. But the fact is when they're on top of that, now they're looking into what we have is basically, I want to say it's 18 feet of windows. And that's the only livable space that we have in the house. Besides the bedrooms, that is the only spot that we have. And I have a 11-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a 3-year-old running through the house. And your guys' questions about where those are located was spot on. Because I'm not sure, I'm not here to not deny the project or approve the project. I know that the city's got to move forward the way it has to go. Obviously, if it had to go away, I wouldn't be upset about it, but I also understand that the city has to move forward with what they have to do. I do understand that what Mr. Hill just spoke about, my house would be impacted if there was a sinkhole. There is a electrical pole on my property. I'm here to say that I will be here. I am taking notes of 100% of anything I have to come back to the city or to the people developing this if anything happens to my family. That is 100% on your guys' head. So that's just my own personal spot. Now, a couple of the other questions you guys were talking about with regards to traffic. A couple of years ago, you guys decided to build a park, Olympus Park, just south of us. And as the city saw it, there wasn't going to be any bathrooms. There wasn't going to be any parking because this was a city, this was a neighborhood park. I have friends that come from Tierra Santa to just go to this park. There are people that drive from around the county. Why? I don't know, maybe because of COVID and the timing that it landed, but people were looking, and because of the internet, there's no secrets anymore. There's no hidden spots, there's nothing of that nature. So people come there because we put in this cool, I'm supposing because it's because of the zip line, that everybody comes up here to ride this thing. But we've had everything but peace there since that thing's gone in. It's starting to slow down, but in the last year, we've had a gentleman that has passed away because of a car accident on Piraeus. And now you're going to add, you were wondering about the density with the VMT, and he wasn't really answering your question straight. There's 405 homes between Leucadia and La Costa, between the freeway and Sidonia. Now they're going to add 149 homes. So you do the math. You can keep asking the question. He can keep running around the 23.7 number. The fact is, it's going to be highly impacted. And you know, if you've ever driven over there, you go down Piraeus Point, the La Costa Piraeus Point intersection is a nightmare. And we never got the promise that we talked about with getting the Leucadia entrance back. We just had the street right, the road widened, but the city did nothing about talking to Caltrans about making that an actual change there. So on top of this, when we talk about the safety of not only the adults, but we're talking about the amount of kids that are going to be around here. And the highest traffic times are between 8 and 9, and then again in the afternoon between about 2 and 3:30. I'm telling you right now, there will be a kid that is either severely injured or dead in the next 2 years after you guys approve this, because we have lacked the idea of figuring out how to figure out the safety and making sure that Lennar or yourselves, I don't care who pays for it, but it needs to be thought about. Kind of like the Beacons thing, but long before it happens, we don't want to create another problem because you're going to have a lot of people here with lawsuits against you guys specifically, not you individually, but the city that you guys have to be to pay for. So I just ask that you guys take a little bit more consideration and maybe go back to the drawing board. I think that the encroachment, I think the incentives, those directly impact me and my home value, but I'm not here just for me. I'm here for the community as well. So obviously I want those to go away. And if building 8 and 9 went away, as you saw in the drawing, I was on page 10 of the density bonus. None of the density bonus houses are in 8 and 9. All it's going to cut into is their profits. So I don't know where they're saying they can't build them. They can build them. They're just choosing not to. So I'll reserve the rest of my time, but I thank you for your evening.
Next, we have Elliot Miller.
And may as well tell us who's right after.
Followed by Richard Weston and Victoria Williamson.
My name is Elliot Miller. I live at 1711 Quarter Street for the last 20 years, and I've lived in the North County since 1979. My two concerns regarding the Piraeus Point project are the lack of adequate parking and the safety of children walking to Capri along Plato Place. First, the inadequate parking, and where will the overflow go? I realize that the project meets and in fact supersedes the required parking per California density bonus of 197 spaces by nearly 75. However, these requirements are based on unrealistic planning for the project. no access to any mass transit, and absolutely no off-site parking nearby. These numbers grossly underestimate the number of spaces needed. For example, they only require 1 space for 1-bedroom unit. What does a couple do when each need a car? For 2-bedroom units, only 1.5 spaces are allotted. For 3-bedroom units, again, only 1.5 spaces are allotted. We all know that many of the units will have 2 to 3 cars, which is just a basic requirement of greater than 284 spaces plus visiting parking. Now, where will everyone go to park? That is not for me to decide. I'm concerned about parking extending into Quarter, which is a very narrow residential road to begin with. If the overflow parking comes to Quarter, it will become dangerous for pedestrians, car and bike traffic, and also for emergency vehicles. One suggestion initiated by the Lennar Group recommended that in perpetuity, the CCNRs for Piraeus Point not allow any off-site parking on Quarter with some penalties associated with it. The second issue is Plato Place, which is a winding, narrow street connecting Piraeus to Quarter. Currently, the street is extremely dangerous to walk on as there is no sidewalks, and it serves as an entrance and egress road for the Capri neighborhood. The Piraeus Point project will certainly provide housing for families with children who will attend Capri Elementary School. I realize that Lennar only has the obligation to build sidewalks on the northern side of Plato up to the eastern edge of the property. The question then arises, where do the children safely walk? The city of Encinitas has a right-of-way of greater than 30 feet all the way to Quarter, allowing a widening of the street with appropriate walking paths or sidewalks. Although at first evaluation, the city felt that they would require the city to buy land or destroy already walls that are there. If you look at the city overlay and walk the street, as I did with 2 Lennar representatives, I believe it would be possible to widen and straighten the street on the south side to allow a reasonable walking path on the north side, all without destruction of walls or having the city to buy land that they do not currently own. The bottom line is, if Lennar, in conjunction with the city, cannot proactively make Plato safe for children to walk to school, the project should be rejected. Yes, it would cost money. However, the city is obtaining a cash influx from Lennar in building fees. If this improvement is not done, my concern is that both Lennar and the city of Encinitas will be financially liable if an accident occurs, as you have been previously warned, and they have decided to ignore this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, folks. Thank you, Planning Commission, for all your hard work and for the staff putting this together. I just have a few comments. I'm not going to duplicate some of the other things that have been said. One is on the transmission lines. Municipal code said it should be buried. It's in a high fire zone. Also, that line has gone off a couple of times. My son is on a ventilator. When that power goes off, that's extremely serious. That's one of the reasons the city wants the lines buried. If we don't do it now, when will it be done? 21, 25, the year 2025? It'll be hundreds of years in the future if it's not done now. That's why the city wanted it done. Also, to vacate the land, crazy idea. That means you cannot make Piraeus enlarged anytime in the future. Also limits what you can do on Plato as well. If you look 100 years, 200 years down the line, we're going to need more space, and you'll probably have to buy that part back. Again, my major concern here is with the children going up to the school. I was very glad that the commission was frank. We don't really care if anyone gets injured or killed. That's crazy. That was the craziest thing I ever heard, but it's very honest. You know, we have to put this project through because the state's putting pressure on us. We need sidewalks. We need bike lanes. It's very important when you go down. I walk Plato. I go down to the Olympus Park sometimes. It's extremely dangerous. When you walk down, according to the California Highway Patrol, you should face oncoming traffic. On the north side, there is no room. There is absolutely no room for a car and a person. So the cars veer over into the other lane. As it becomes busier and busier, the street over the years, there's not room for an Amazon truck, a pedestrian, and a car simultaneously. And as others have mentioned, it's just a very dangerous situation. So I would really encourage you, make this project, if you have to put it through, contingent on a way to make more room on the road. Even if you put a shoulder in, there has to be more room on the road, particularly on that northern side. Thank you very much.
Victoria or David Williamson? And there's a time donation from Victoria. Are you present?
Yeah, I'm not even going to take 3
Okay.
minutes. Thanks, commissioners, for hearing us. My name is Dave Williamson, Leucadia resident since '95. And we bought our house at 748 Plato Place in '98. So I never really thought that property could be developed into anything near what is being contemplated here. It just seemed to me as very ill-suited for any large multifamily development. I thought eventually maybe a cul-de-sac will go in there with half a dozen homes. It's based on the exception requested on the slope. I mean, that tells you all you need to know. This place is just not designed geologically to have a 149 unit complex there. And I understand that it could be 380 or whatever, but it doesn't, it just, if you walk the property, walk the neighborhood, you go, what the hell are they thinking? That's just not a place for a 149 unit project based on all the things that have been talked about with the lack of sidewalk, oh my God, the traffic at the corner of Plato and Piraeus it's already getting ridiculous now. I can't imagine. A couple of things have not been mentioned that I'd like to question, which is if this were to go through, what is the contemplated construction time from groundbreaking to, the first sale? And then also, we haven't really talked a lot about during the construction. It's going to be, I live 80 feet from the property line, and I have asthma, and I can't imagine 6,000 truckloads of dirt being hauled out of there, not only because of the diesel, but that, the dust and the dirt. That property has had agriculture, it's had fertilizer, it's had pesticide, it's had a nightmare of stuff happen on top of it. And so, what would be done to mitigate the effects of that during construction? That's all I got. Thank you.
Next, we have Robert Mertfelt, followed by Daniel Baxter, and then Karen Caden. Okay. Daniel has a time donation from Sydney Goldstein. Is she present?
Yeah, back.
Okay.
Good evening, Commissioners, Planning Department, concerned citizens. My name is Dan Baxter. I'm a retired engineer. My wife and I live on Cotter Street. Much of what I had to say has been covered, so I'll try and just hit the high points where I'm adding to what others have said. That means this will be a little more disjointed than planned. During the course of this meeting, several ideas have been shared as to why this permit application should be denied or modified, and why additional time should be granted for review of the extensive materials. I agree with most of these sentiments, but in case the permit is granted, I'd like to offer 3 specific requests for improvements that should be completed as part of or concurrent with this development. All are intended to reduce reasonable and foreseeable public safety risks and probable negative impacts. They relate to, not surprisingly, parking, sidewalks, and traffic. So regarding parking, Elliot and some others have talked about the pathway up Plato. Sorry, that's regarding sidewalks. Regarding parking, the basic question is how much parking is enough? And the Project compliance with the R30 overlay and density bonus in no way means that actual or foreseeable parking is adequate. All it means is the project is compliant. Using the Encinitas Code 3054-030 as a guideline for expected parking demand, a shortage of about a dozen guest spaces and 82 resident spaces exists in this plan, or at least is likely to exist. A suggestion was made to add an irrevocable clause to the CC&R that requires residents to park only in their garages. This should be enacted, but even if it's implemented and is somehow enforceable, it does not fully address how the overall parking demand will be accommodated. At minimum, even if all the residents comply and don't own as many cars, there's still a deficit of about a dozen guest parking spaces. At and around this unique site, safe on-street parking is not currently available. Others have elaborated on that. I won't go further. So even if the city can't or won't compel the developer to add additional off-street parking, I believe there's an opportunity to add additional on-street parking into the planned Piraeus Street upgrades. I believe this is feasible, not good, but less offensive than other alternatives, and equitable in consideration of the approximately 1+ acres of roadway vacation that have been requested by the developer. Further, I believe the city needs to clarify and identify where on-street parking is not allowed on nearby streets. Failure to do so simply increases the public safety risk stemming from foreseeable conditions of development. Second point, pedestrian safety. It's already been talked about. The point I would make here is really any solution is acceptable if it addresses the increase in foot traffic. Note also that unless the parking is prohibited on Cawdor, it is likely there'll be not just kids walking on Plato Place. Third, on to traffic. I'd urge you to work with the city of Carlsbad to improve the intersection of Piraeus and La Costa Boulevard. There's an existing bottleneck that others have spoken to. My specific request is to widen the northbound Piraeus Street for about 250 feet where it approaches La Costa Boulevard. This would allow the right and left turn lanes to be lengthened accordingly and would help to resolve the backup of vehicles trying to turn right onto La Costa Boulevard where they're currently trapped behind the left turn queue when it extends back into the single lane portion of northbound Piraeus. Point out this is most pronounced during the morning rush when the vehicles turning left into the park and ride on La Costa Boulevard alter the timing of the lights. So perhaps an additional study of the light timing could be reviewed, but the point is simply lengthening the left and right turn lanes would at least provide relief to vehicles transitioning from northbound Piraeus Street to eastbound La Costa Boulevard. This land is already owned by the city of Carlsbad, and the road grade is already very close to the land, so minimal earth moving and not a lot of blacktop. In conclusion, the above requests are intended as practical mitigations for some of the public safety risks and negative impacts that would reasonably and foreseeably result if this project goes forward. Even if you don't adopt these specific suggestions, please address parking, pedestrian safety, and traffic mitigations now during the planning phase to improve the outcomes of the project. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Karen has 2 time donations. Is Patty Rogers here? And Doug Miller?
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity for us to share our life experiences with regards to Piraeus Point. I would like to share first about the Skyloft Road, where each side, north and south of Skyloft Road off of Piraeus Point is a 4.5 acres that is off-site of the housing element. That should not be even part of the housing element concern because it already exists, cannot build on it. And I don't like to see a builder bring this in to make it look like, oh, we're giving you a gift of preserved land when it's not buildable. And if you all came to this site, and that preserved area on the 6.88 acres is a ravine. It's green, it's not buildable, it is lovely to see. It has a vista point up above that you can see the lagoon and the ocean. I want to just share that. If you haven't seen it, I wish you would just stop this meeting and come and see it. I just want to bring that up. Thank you. I know that's about 2,000 to 3,000 pages you probably received in 6 days. This is crazy. I also would like to bring up the open space. Open space, do not count the 4.5 for open space, and that preserve area is not really open space. You can't go on it. And the 149 units, their open space is walking down the streets in between their high-density buildings. That's open space to them? I don't even know if they're getting sidewalks in between their buildings to go to the pool. And as someone mentioned, we know the pool is only going to be about 6,000 square feet of amenity. Where is so-called sustainability and have your own gardens, grow your own food, have your own parking, have everything inside your community without overspilling into our view? Now I'm going to start reading my stuff. All right, I know some people have said things, but I'm going to ask you, please, deny the applicant's request for the incentive. Put the poles underground. The municipal code requires new and old developments to bury them. It's a small gift to the homeowners who are mostly impacted by the project. Deny this incentive should not result in actual cost reduction provided to the affordable housing costs. Second, deny. Also, do not grant the request of the waiver. 40% encroachment to 33% of the property, that's a lot. The municipal code limitation is 20% allowable encroachment. Deny this immense encroachment on such sensitive inland bluff is in the designated I-5 scenic view corridor with vista points and view sheds for the public viewing. It's inspiring and delightful to know that daily over 180,000 public viewers enjoy the scenic inland bluffs north from Leucadia Boulevard towards the Bataguitas Lagoon. Therefore, the massive cluster of buildings on this site should be blended on a smaller scale. This is the only project along the I-5 frontage road that stands out of place. The project's plan is not conforming with the existing neighborhood. Planning commissioners, respectfully, please do not recommend to the council to vacate or, let's say, give away a right-of-way, which is almost an acre. The right-of-way is a protection for buffer and space for future improvements. Vacate only to allow ingress and egress only. The applicant is required to put 30 trees per acre on their site, which they are not doing. Without vacating, they can donate more trees above the city requirement on the right-of-way to soften the view of the bulk and height without giving them our city property. We are aware that they are only constructing a pedestrian walkway to go nowhere. They said that. All right. Neighborhood to look like, we don't want our neighborhood to look like a parking lot. It changes our neighborhood character, and what the general plan provides is to protect and preserve. We expect the city to be leaders in safety, health, and public welfare for all surrounding and existing neighborhoods to have and to enjoy the quality of life. We are here to let you know that this property has historically used only 4 acres of sunflowers because of the constraints. During the housing element selection, Cannon 2 Piraeus Point was last-minute deal. As a reminder, these sites, and especially Cannon property, did not include full true assessment, including steep slopes over 25%, site description, staff missed, the topography constraints, and described less than 25% slope, just to sell this parcel to the council. City slopes require our 25 to 40% slope allows to use only 50% of the acreage. 40% plus slope allows to use 0% of acreage. Consider the steep slopes of this property, and cutting into the slopes create 83,000 cubic yards, moving 83,000 trucks loads over 11 months. It is a fact that this project is a burden. On your so-called open space roof decks, please have a restriction of safety and protect from fire risk, including noise, lights, air quality considerations, no barbecues, no fire pits, low lighting, and no noise after 10 o'clock. Those roof decks are considered as open space. I don't think we have any houses in our community that has a rooftop without property. It doesn't conform to how we live here. In conclusion, deny Piraeus Point project and/or have the project build 50% or less to conform and preserve the sensitive property. We need love too. Thank you.
Next, we have Jim Brackus. Not present. Okay. Then we'll have Steve Locko, followed by Sheila Cameron. Steve has a time donation from Sheila Locko, present. Sheila? Oh, Steve, yep. Oh, Sheila Locko is donating to Steve Locko. Yes. Yes, sorry.
City Council meeting. Anyway, Steve Locko, Lucadia, Sheila and I have been here, seems like forever. We love it here. And I got to tell you, it just seems like I'll bet I've been in front of you guys or the City Council at least a dozen times, and it's always to somehow or another undo some careless, lazy rubber stamp by city planners. And in this case, you've already heard about the waivers and the accommodations. I feel like the city staff worked with Lennar and just, oh, well, you know, maybe we can get you around that underground requirement. Let's work on something like this. And then when you take a look at where the power poles are going to be, none of that's right. So at any rate, when I first saw the pictures, because I have looked at them, but not closely in terms of the Lennar pictures, but it did take me back to South Chicago because it reminded me of public housing units in downtown Chicago, maybe Detroit. But then I saw the freeway picture and I thought, you know, it actually looks more like a prison. So all of you can be proud of a prison that's being built along the freeway, and I could just, gosh, hon, they built a prison there. That's an odd place to put one. But at any rate, you know, everybody's talked about the forest floor decks. We all know that those are fire risks, et cetera. But I did want to touch a little bit on the population of folks that are going to be living there. So if you take a look at the fact that on average, at least 20% of condo or townhomes are bought by investors, because the number is actually higher for single-family homes. Let's do the math. So we've got 150 homes, 30 of them are rentals. 15 are low income. So we can put whatever we want into that HOA or the CC&Rs, but that project could easily go into a death spiral when you have literally a third or more of the people living there not as owners. So again, we can go ahead and require CC&Rs, but that's going to leave the neighbors with contacting the HOA to say, gee whiz, you guys keep having parties on the roof decks. What's the HOA going to do? Well, they'll call the investor, because it's not likely going to be an established homeowner going to be partying with a bunch of friends. So at any rate, I wanted to summarize a little bit. They gave me a script here. So obviously, we recommend the project not be approved. I think it ought to be at a minimum delayed. I can't even believe that the commissioners would consider a vote on this tonight. But you heard all about soil stability concerns from David Hill. He's our resident geek. The guy's brilliant, and he's undercut everything that the city staff did not do and that Lennar ignored. The consultant, again, didn't talk about the impact of removing 6,400 cubic yards of dirt, whatever the number is. And then you add to that all of the construction impact for the neighborhood. So since we've got no impact assessment, I guess it's just one of those things where we'll all be expected to live with it while it's being built out. We request again that the 40% slope waivers not be granted. That's per codes 30.16.010 and .030, because again, a third of the project shouldn't be buildable at 100%, and in fact, almost 12% can't be built at all. So again, you've got a waiver with basically flattening a piece of property in rural Leucadia just to accommodate Lennar maximizing profits by working with local builder advocates. So again, the other incentive to avoid undergrounding of utilities, again, I still feel like the city worked that around with Lennar rather than seriously consider what was supposed to happen, which is you tell Lennar a new project undergrounds utilities, instead of let's sit down and figure out how you can get around it. Dennis talked a lot about the vacays. Everybody did. It's astonishing to me that the city would literally negotiate away city rights and give away city property or public property to a builder to accommodate a problem that they happen to have at the detriment of the neighbors involved. Okay, so along with that, when we take a look at the fact that they've decided to give the builder these benefits, there's no give back, there's no offset. All the accommodations are going one way, not the other. So you ought to be thinking about that. So, and finally, of course, this is the one part that I always worry a lot about because, again, it always seems to get approved at some point in time, and then God help you when they actually build it. Because the pretty trees don't get planted, the parking isn't where it's supposed to be, the people that live there aren't doing what they need to, they're ignoring the CC&Rs, the HOA, because frankly, I think that project could go into a death spiral if they had enough renters there. So the comment that the city has decided that, and Lennar has decided that, gee, our kids can't walk to school safely because, some people took back public easement and, they planted some bushes there and, we just decided that wasn't workable. I mean, that's astonishing to me that I guess the city planners don't have kids. So no neighborhood parking from the project on any of the streets. Provide that walkway that I just mentioned. And again, consider northbound Piraeus at La Costa Boulevard, because I can tell you one thing, the city of Carlsbad has absolutely no interest in funding any improvement on that corner for traffic coming out of Encinitas. They have no interest. You're not going to get any help from Carlsbad. I've been down that road before. So anyway, it's in opposition to the city of Encinitas' mission. The last comment about political climate is the people that did that video, they preferred to stay anonymous because they're business people here in the city. And they were worried about the impact if someone found out that they did that video. What does that tell you about the political climate in Encinitas? I'm done. Sorry, I went 4 seconds over.
Sheila Cameron had 2 time donations. Is Kathy Towner present? No. John Carlson?
It was Linda. Linda is also
Okay,
present.
Linda Newbert?
Yes.
Okay.
Good evening, Chairman Doyle and Planning Commissioners. I won't take 9 minutes, I'm sure, but I have a few things to say. My name is Sheila Cameron. I will state unequivocally that the majority of voters rejected these 15 project sites in the 2018 ballot, the Measure U. Despite that, we find ourselves having to accommodate them, intruding into our neighborhoods all over the city with 40% of the sites falling into our community of Leucadia. Very unfair distribution. And this particular site, known as Piraeus Point, which has caused the neighborhood and community a great deal of angst, is before you tonight. You are hearing many concerns and issues, and I thank you for listening and considering. I've been an activist since 1984, helping to incorporate our small communities and create this beautiful city of Encinitas, but I'm worried about its future. I represented Leucadia on the Community Advisory Board, which no longer exists, served as city council member and mayor of the city, a 40-year experience. And I have a reputation for not being a developer's favorite person, so I'm going to make a real comment here. I think Mr. David Shepard of Lennar Homes and Mr. Brian Grover, himself a Leucadia resident with Nolan Communities, have been, in my opinion and experience, a very good team to work with. And believe me, I've spent years fighting developers. They have gone out of their way to meet with citizens, whether in a group, in one-on-one situations, coming to neighbors' homes to see and understand our fears and concerns with regard to this Piraeus Point development. Accommodating the doubling number of housing units and population increase and traffic that will be generated in our neighborhood is daunting. The challenge is, frankly, how can we coexist with this new neighborhood and minimize any negative impacts on our homes and families and the tranquility of our neighborhood? I'm not going to reiterate the issues of concern you are hearing here tonight. I am intimately familiar with them, helped identify them, and you are hearing them. At this point, my aim is to ask Lennar for some concessions to alleviate some of our concerns. Here's my list of asks. That is spelled ASKS, just to clarify the word. Okay, posted on buildings, a capacity notice of the maximum number of people allowed on rooftops at any one time as a condition of the HOA for safety reasons. Parking, HOA enforceable conditions and CCNRs that no parking of residents or guests is to be in neighborhood streets outside of the project. To that end, a special thanks here to the efforts of Dan Baxter and Lennar that created an additional 16 or 17 parking spaces on the north end of this project. Every little bit helps, and that was a big help. For the next 3 issue resolutions, I am asking both Lennar's support and this Planning Commission's acceptance and recommendations if this goes forward to the City Council, but your recommendations would be appreciated either way. Dark skies. Leucadia is a dark skies community as designated in our general plan. We request the city not require streetlights of any kind, especially as depicted within the project currently. And the ones depicted are these huge lights. They're covered like this. They go down, but light still reflects up. Shaded lights on homes, motion-activated lights are fine and consistent with what is in the surrounding neighborhoods that have no street lights, as in the dark skies time-honored policy. Transportation. The transportation and traffic fees paid by Lennar to the city in the amount of $392,689.50 should be directed specifically to constructing a safe route to school on Plato. I feel the city has an obligation that goes with their sanctioning of these projects. They have to make sure that transportation fees are used to create any needed safe infrastructure for new and existing residents connected with each project. We don't want that money taken and put over on El Camino Real or some other pet project they have. Safe infrastructure is key. The mayor and council keep talking about how important infrastructure is. Let them start by putting it in for these projects. Material suggested, I've gone a little overboard here, is what is used on urania. It's permeable, wear resistant, and attractive, so take a look at that. We are requesting that the 15 very low-income affordable units within this Piraeus Point project be sold, which is the intent of the statutes, so that people of less economic means and of diverse heritage have the opportunity to own a home. No rentals. Ownership creates stability in neighborhoods. No sales for LLCs or opportunistic syndicate groups. Individuals and families only. I hope both Lennar and Planning Commission can support these requests tonight. A few things I heard come up that I made notes on. I agree, the school on Quail Botanical Gardens should be built. It's long overdue. They got a garden there, et cetera, because they have to do something every 10 years in order to keep a permit. That land was given to them as part of the mitigation for the Ecke Ranch. They need to build a school on it. The second thing the school is responsible for, and they should do it, and you better understand what all took place, but it's been a long time, the buses were all taken off. Consequently, our neighborhoods are packed, and 2 or 3 different times during the day. I suggest you do a petition. You can catch all the parents that are driving their kids right there, all lined up, about 50 of them, and you can get them to sign the petition. They'd probably be happy to have the school buses back. Third, I've been talking with the city of Carlsbad. Dan Baxter and I have thought about getting together, and we probably will, and go and talk to the head of planning and engineering. It's Tom Frank. He lives in Encinitas, and I'll bet he takes Piraeus all the time. So those are just a couple extra points. I'm kind of neutral on this. It's very difficult. It's a difficult decision. I am not happy to have any of these things that have been shoved down our throat. But the important thing is to make them something that we can all live with. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila.
That's it for public speakers.
That's it. Does anyone need to use the facilities? Should we just plow through? Oh, yeah. Well, let's hear from the applicant here. Say 5 minutes. Want to touch base on anything?
Thank you very much, Chairman Doyle. Couple of things really quick. So first of all, some comments about the site plan and EV charging. Want to make sure everybody knows that every home that we build will have an EV charging station for the residents. And the 4 EV charging stations that were referenced by one of the commenters are for guest parkers, and it's for guests that bring their cars to be charged. The CC&Rs, of course, we always have CC&Rs that do require that the homeowners park their cars in their garage and not off-site. Something about the air quality and the grading. So there's some inaccuracies in the numbers you've heard. So we have roughly 83,000 yards of cut, 24,000 yards of fill, and 57,000 yards of export. So the cut and fill, a lot of that's going to happen on site. We're going to do everything we can to keep balance as it's coming out right now. It'll be about 57,000 yards of export. We modeled that in our air quality analysis. We plugged in with the Cal-EMOD model, went to a conservative worst case scenario, which assumed 8 cubic yards per load. Usually we get about 10 to 12,000 yards per load, so about 6,000 hauls. That's going to happen over a 40-day period spread out over the entire 6-month duration of the grading operation. So I think it's important to understand that. The Cal-EMOD model had 7,200 strips. Reality is what I'm sharing with you. We had to model the most conservative approach in analyzing the air quality. I'd like to, if the commissioner would indulge it, we have some experts here, George Burrows from Condon Johnson and Dave Evans from Geocon, our geotechnical engineer, to speak to the issues raised about soils and about the soils and the soil nail walls. Also Steve Cook from Intersecting Metrics. There was some confusion about the traffic analysis, and I'd like to have them come up and offer some information. Finally, I do want to say that Lennar is willing to accept the asks that Sheila Cameron offered. So we're willing to take those on, provided, of course, there are a couple of things that require the city's compliance and the city's agreement to. And if the city's amenable to it, so are we. Lastly, I'd appreciate maybe the city attorney speaking and advising the commission on our rights with the waivers and the incentives that we've requested that are allowed under density bonus law. There seems to be some confusion about that too. So with that, if the commission is with your indulgence, I'd like to have our technical experts speak.
Okay.
Who's the traffic guy? Come on up front. So what is it, 23.7? Isn't that 2016?
So the reason
Help me
why it's
understand.
26, so the California Office of Planning and Research, they provided directive on how SB 743, which is the switch from level of service, which is the traditional way traffic operations, to VMT as the new impact standard under CEQA. In 2018, they provided guidance, technical advisory on CEQA-related impacts for transportation. In that guidance, they basically said, when determining VMT-related impacts, you need to look at the land uses around your project and use that as an analog for the VMT per capita or VMT per employee in which your project will generate. And so that's where the 23.7 comes from. That comes from the Sandag model. That's from the land uses that surround the project site. And 2016 is the current base year for Sandag. They're a little bit behind in the 2024 regional plan that is upcoming. That will get updated to 2019. But right now, 2016 is the best data we have to work with. So we looked at the Sandag model, the 23.9 VMT per capita. That's the VMT per capita of all the homes around the project. So we use that as an analog for our project, assuming that the VMT per capita would be the same, because the residents of these homes will still need to drive the same distance to their jobs, to the services, and to make all their different trips. We compare that 23.9 VMT per capita to the regional average. That's the entire San Diego region. That includes downtown, that includes uptown, that includes the county of San Diego. So it's the average VMT per capita across the region. And the impact standard is we need to be 15% below that to not be significant. So the VMT per capita for the region is about 18 miles per person. So when you reduce that to 15%, that comes down to 16.9. So that's what we're comparing the 23.9 of the project site to. So that's 16.9, which is the standard for the region.
So I'm still confused, though, because I understand that, yes, these ones will all be generating, what, I believe it's 23.7, just like everyone else.
Sorry.
But there's now 149 more of them than there were. We can turn the timer off. There's 149 more of those units doing 23.7. Usually, I expect a traffic study to show me the impact, the additional impact of the new project, and this is not, I'm not getting this at all.
So that's how VMT works out. It's not an additive standard, it's a efficiency standard. So you're looking at the amount of VMT that each person will generate. So you can add as many homes as you want, but the people within that, since we're dividing the VMT of the homes by the total number of people, when you add more homes, you add more people, so it's an equation. When the numerator goes up, the denominator also goes up in kind, so that ratio is maintained.
Well, I mean, if we added 1,000 more units there, that 23.7 number would most likely be higher.
That's actually incorrect. It would actually go down. So the California,
okay.
so
You'll
and
have
this
to
is based
explain
on
that
this is based on state standards. The California Air Pollution Control Officers Association developed the GHG handbook, which comes up with mitigation measures for VMT. And the first measure that they have is as you increase density, VMT goes down because you're now creating more of an urban environment. So really the key metrics to reducing VMT based on state standards is increasing density, reducing parking, and charging for parking. That's why we have a significant impact, because we don't want to go down those roads based on community concerns and basically community character.
Okay, well, I mean, I hear your reasoning. I find this traffic study to be absolutely useless. I mean,
So, but I would like to point out, but I would like to point out, this is for CEQA. We also did a local mobility assessment that the city does require, which is more of the traditional measures, where we did look at ADT, we did look at adding traffic to intersections and evaluated the operations of those intersections with and without the project as well. It was actually post-COVID.
And what results did you turn up with?
So the project would increase traffic slightly, but it was not to the, to either the city of Carlsbad, the city of Encinitas, or Caltrans standards to actually create an impact or warrant improvement. And it was peer reviewed by all jurisdictions.
Okay, well, thank you. I've got no more questions for you. Thanks.
Does anybody else
I'll
have
put you
questions
up
while I'm here?
there. Does anyone else? This is our time. Let's. Oh, yeah. I'm so sorry. I'm jumping ahead.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Dave Evans from Geocon. We're the geotechnical consultants for the applicant. We performed the geotechnical investigations on the site starting back in 2001. And I understand the sensitivity of this project. I'm just here to provide unbiased technical information based on our studies and experience in these geologic formations. So I just wanted to quickly address some of the things that have come up tonight about the site geology and the seepage conditions and groundwater and subsidence. And I'll try to make this quick, but the site geology, the materials that underlie the site are exposed in the La Costa Avenue cut slope, the north-facing cut slope just east of I-5. You can see the orange terrace deposits on the top of dense sandstone, and that's underlain by the Santiago Formation, which is clay stones and sandstones. So that's where the seepage comes in. Most of our cuts, or almost all of our cuts, are going to be in the orange terrace deposit that's in the top, and it's not layered. Below that, where you have the layering of clay stones and sandstones, the water seeps down along the sandstone, hits the perch layers, and moves laterally. So in our studies, we found some minor seepage conditions in our boring, less than an inch thick in the borings, perched along a few claystone layers. And those were, 35 to 40 feet below grade. They're going to be 15 to 30 feet below the ultimate grade. So the seepage conditions are deep and they're pretty minor. So the way that relates to subsidence, I know the one gentleman was concerned about subsidence. Subsidence occurs in usually loose, saturated deposits. There's a buoyancy there. The water draws down, the loose soil settles, and you can see sinkholes and things like that. The homes that are to the east of the project are underlain by the terrace deposits, which is the dense sandstone. So if there was a seepage problem to develop in that unit, water could be drawn out, injected in, whatever. It's so dense it would not induce any kind of hydrocompression or anything like that because it's so consolidated. So the potential for subsidence due to groundwater removal is very low to nil. And I'll let George talk about the soil nail cut, which is going to be primarily in the terrace deposits, which does not have any kind of layers that has seepage.
I have a question for you. I missed the date of your study. When was the date of the seepage study?
We started in 2001 working on the project, and our most recent investigation, I think, was, I can't remember the exact date, 2000 maybe. I'm sorry, 2020.
2020?
I believe there's been
is the most recent.
Yeah, several episodes of field work, and I think we've had 3 different episodes, and they're all contained in our geotechnical report that was submitted.
Thank you.
Hi, George Burrow with Condon Johnson. We're the wall designer. So a couple objective points on the concerns about the soil nail wall. One, the plans that we provided detail the installation procedures. The soil is not saturated. The calculations show the factors of safety. There is drainage behind the wall. The wall is not designed to resist hydrostatic pressure. The nail tendons themselves are corrosion protected. And unlike what was said, failure of soil nail walls is actually not common. And you guys may not realize it, but you see soil nail walls all over the place. We probably build about 1 million square feet a year in San Diego proper. In fact, I-5 at Loma Santa Fe, the big wall on the east side, we built that in 2006 and still standing. Efflorescence is not a sign of corrosion, and soil nail walls do not require passive resistance. A soil nail wall stops at the bottom of the wall. And the power poles are not close enough to the wall to impact the design. So if you have any other questions about it, let me know.
I'm going to close public comment.
I do have a clarifying question I'd like to ask of the city
Open it
staff.
back up, or you want of them or the city?
City staff.
Okay, I'm closing public comment. It's,
Regarding the vacation, the street vacation, is there a fee associated? I mean, are they purchasing that from the city, or is the city granting that to them without a fee?
So there is no fee associated with that. So the city would make that declaration. It's quite common for, I shouldn't say common, but it's any number of times of a year that cities might vacate some or portions of their right-of-way if they make findings, essentially saying, we don't need it for whatever reason.
Okay. And can someone describe to me how much parking is along that street? Or what is the plan for the improved street frontage? I see that there's a sidewalk. Is there parallel parking or anything else provided along that?
No, there is not.
Is it striped with the red curve? I mean, will there be no parking allowed, or is it just?
There have been requests to, from both sides, I guess, of either red striping it or allowing parking to go there.
Okay, so currently no parking is allowed or proposed?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
hey, a couple things I want to, who would know, I'm pretty certain that Piraeus was closed at where it hit Leucadia Boulevard because it was too close to the highway. We don't control the intersections directly adjacent to the 5. Who do we have traffic-y back there? I want to know, does anyone know when Leucadia Boulevard was, or Piraeus was closed? Where? 1989. Thank you, Sheila. Now I'm going to try and get somebody from the city who knows. It's, we need something definitive from the city.
Yeah. Chairman Doyle and Planning Commissioners Jim Knowlton, GeoPacifica. I've been the geotechnical consultant for the city for several decades. I was involved in the Leucadia Boulevard widening, which created this situation with Piraeus. And at the time, I think the decision was to make the on-ramp and then the access to Piraeus, but we didn't widen it because it would be taking away too much property to the east. We would be taking a couple of homes, and further on, we'd be taking a lot of property, and they decided not to do that.
Okay, yeah, so what's in the way there right now? There's that little floral building.
Yeah, and there's a couple of walls, and we would have to basically acquire property to widen Piraeus there.
Fair enough. So, but it's not, as my thought was, that it's a sandag thing where, because I know there's some intersections we're not allowed to mess with the timing of the lights because they're.
It was not a Caltrans, requirement for us not to do that.
Okay. Well, it's a little far away to demand this developer there, but I think, thank you, Jim. I know for my part, I think there's going to be things that we want done that we can't make happen from this thing, but I've talked to our staff, and I do plan to send, kind of since we're in the weeds here, a list of recommendations to council. I mean, someone asks, how long is this going to take? And it's like, for me, I start off with 3 years at least. I can't picture anything happening. No one will be moving in here for 3+ years. Someone can, Brian, you might say, might be more optimistic, but I've seen, I don't see a lot of them happening quickly. So we're going to have time. The council's got apparently the will to try and catch up and fix these things. These huge housing developments were basically mandated on us by the state. The state didn't give us any extra money for all the infrastructure improvements we're going to need. So we're going to be playing catch up on that. So the housing projects, this one and others, are coming, and we are on the hook for all the infrastructure improvements. And it's not fair, and it's nice to say the state should give us money, but they're not gonna. Or they will, maybe. So my hope here is that if we get to a point where we approve this project tonight, or deny it, I don't care, we are going to be sending a list of, hopefully, recommendations to council, because they're willing to do the things necessary. You know, if they had more money, they'd do them all. But it's kind of up to us, who are most into this stuff, to provide the proper recommendations. Now, some of them, like certainly restriping Piraeus so that we can get a longer left turn lane onto La Costa, is like, that's our property. We can do that. It's just painting the ground. I mean, there's a lot of, you know, I keep hearing, oh, there's no room for parking or anything on Piraeus. Piraeus is a racetrack. I mean, you know, people get off the highway so they can, you know, if there's traffic on the 5, they'll dump onto Piraeus because it's so wide. I'm surprised it's not a racetrack. I mean, it looks like a great place for drag racing. I grew up in New Jersey. We would be all over that strip. It's just the right amount of curve. It goes a little up and down. It's a hoot of a road, but it feels a million miles wide. Now, I've learned from Abe Bannigan, our traffic engineer, that's like, you narrow the traffic lanes a foot and people slow down. You narrow it another foot and people slow down. So I see Piraeus has there's things we can do with just painting the ground. We don't have to build anything. Well, no, somebody's shaking their head back there. I don't know who that is. That's okay. In my personal opinion, I feel we can fix a lot of our problems. We can't fix them, but we can make them better. And better is really, you know, that's all we can hope for. We're not going to make things perfect. So, looking forward to it. Steve,
Can I make a motion, 2 motions? One, I think we need to stop at 10 o'clock unless we vote to move on. And could I make a motion that we close the public comment section?
I think I've closed public comment. I'll close it again.
Thank you.
Do we want to make a motion to extend? Susan, you shaking?
No, I had a question about what you were saying. So when was Piraeus closed? The south end of it?
1989, according to Sheila Cameron.
1989, and to reopen
No, that's wrong.
it.
Okay, it was sometime in the past.
That is accurate.
98? Yeah, because I remember it being there when I was. So, but before we do that, a point of order. Steve was bringing up at 10 o'clock is 10 minutes away. So
Yeah,
we need to.
I just wanted to clarify that. Were you asking, does it take widening it to reopen it?
I was asking if it was even possible at all. If it was closed because it was too close to the highway interchange. Caltrans kind of controls a lot of those intersections. So now what I hear from Jim is that's not the case. It is theoretically possible to open. It's just extremely difficult and expensive.
Okay. I thought that's what you were discussing, and I just wanted to be sure I heard it correctly. Thanks.
So let's make a motion. We're going to extend?
My sense is that we're not going to finish by 10.
No, we're not going to finish by 10.
My question is, are we going to really finish by 10:30? Or do we vote to continue?
Well, we haven't even really started deliberations yet.
Historically, our deliberations.
Historically, no. If we try plowing through, we'll be here till 11 or more. And I'm somewhat concerned.
I think I would like to move to continue this to our next meeting.
I'll share one other point here. This is, now I checked with Anna Kalamusi and our, attorney on this one. This there's a quorum of 3 members here, but a majority of the quorum does not pass a case. It needs 3 affirmative votes to approve a case or deny a case. So I've been concerned from the start that we are 1 commissioner short. And yeah, I don't think we're going to make it. I don't think we're going to finish this. I got an hour and a half worth of stuff here myself. And did I hear a motion to continue?
I'd second that.
And a second?
Continue it to the next meeting, this particular item.
So we have a motion and a second. Let's call the vote. I'll say aye.
Aye.
Votes unanimous with our sitting commissioners. That's 3 ayes with a 1 recusal and 1 absence.
To the next planning commission
Oh, this is
meeting.
a date certain for our next planning commission on
When's that meeting? May 18th?
May 18th.
And then, so the public is aware, we've already closed public comment, so the commission will be deliberating at that point, but the public will not have an additional opportunity to speak at that hearing. If you've already, I should say, if you've already spoken, if you've already donated time, then you would not have any additional time. It's possible that the commission may allow additional public comment for those people that have not commented yet or have not donated time, but that will be up to the chair, and they can make that determination at that time.
And in layman's terms, that means no double dipping. We'll get to the bottom of this. We're a pretty good planning commission. We're going to do the right thing, hopefully. At this point, so this item is continued, and the next item on my agenda is, adjournment till May 18th. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.